Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have live ENFP Q&A, and I'll have them introduce themselves. So Andy, would you like to tell us a bit about you?
Hi, so my name is Andy. I'm an 8-wing 7. I'm definitely an ENFP, and if you saw the last video, I'm much more chill than I used to be. I'm high school, I'll just say that, but I like to think of myself as fairly educated on the type Myers-Briggs topic for at least my age. And I'm certainly I'm a sex dom, so I want like the romance and stuff. And I'll have a lot to say. I'll speak with my hands, but you know, me and my insightful self can learn to shut up.
So by sex dom, he means sexual dom in the Enneagram, so it's nothing weird.
Nothing weird. Think of it like I'm seeking a partner romance. It's worded weird. I don't like it, but it's the terminology, so
Yeah. It reminds me of Kiersey and how he says the NFs want soulmates. And so, Bryan.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Bryan, and I'm also an ENFP. I'm not sure my Enneagram, but I think I'm a 7-wing 8. And I'm a teacher and a creative writer, and I live here in Japan. And I'm going to do a little plug here. I'm going to have a short story coming out this week on my blog, which is very ENFP, and it's on the topic of synchronicity. So keep an eye out for it. It's my present to the world.
Excellent. I'll have it linked below. And Mickey?
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, I'm Mickey. I'm an ENFP as well. I'm yet to be Enneagram tested. Actually, I would like some of you to point me in the right direction as to where I can get a good test at. I'm a psychology student, and I'm looking to be a therapist. And I like the Myers-Briggs personality indicators. It helps me sort of get to understand people better, or to kind of play the roles in my head. I'm just here to learn more from you guys. And oh yeah, and I'm starting a blog as well. Yeah, I'm on Medium. Yeah, I'll plug my at the end.
Awesome. And Kendrick?
So hi everyone, my name is Kendrick, and I am an Enneagram 7-wing 8. And I am a travel vlogger. So I have a YouTube channel for travel. I'm trying to visit every single country in the world. So I am at country number 89 right now out of 1.
Is he frozen on you guys too, or is
Yeah, he's totally frozen.
I was like, oh, is it me? I hope it's not me.
maybe he's in a country with horrible internet like America.
Got it.
Yeah, and so Kendrick has a YouTube channel called ENFP Mail. He interviewed me there, so I'll have that linked down below as well. And Kyle?
Yeah, I am also an ENFP, 7-wing 6. I would consider myself a Renaissance man. I'm a certified personality hacker. I'm also a certified arborist, a certified scuba diver, and I have a performing arts degree from Providence University College with a minor in theology and training in prairie horticulture program. I wrote this down, I prepared. I've been a semi-professional singer, actor, pianist, music teacher, harpist, choral conductor, and composer. I also play the viola and djembe, but I haven't gotten paid for that. I've been a landscaper, a worship arts pastor, and nursery sales manager, and most recently a small business owner. I also invest in the stock market. Now you know everything there is to know about the shallow part of me.
That was quite the list, quite the long diversity of things you've been a part of. I'm also a part of Personality Hackers certification program. Yeah. And hi, I'm Joyce. I'm an INFJ, and I'm a certified MBTI practitioner, and I facilitate the instrument in organizations. And today, let's ask these ENFP questions. So I guess I'll start off with the first question, and it is, what is your relationship with being controlled, everyone?
With what? I didn't hear.
With being controlled by other people, by circumstances. What is your relationship with freedom and control? Also, live chat people ask questions as well. Hey, Pressy. Hey, Tony.
So is this a free-for-all, or is this a let's take turns?
Free for all, bloody free for all.
Yeah. All right, let's get the bloody free for all. Yeah.
You got your answer ready.
All right, so I'll just make one up on the fly because that's what I'll do. All right, so what am I saying? So my relationship with being controlled is heavily dependent on the one doing the controlling, and heavily dependent on the level and degree of control. I think those were synonymous in the ways that I use them, but whatever. So let's say for my mom, she's somebody I trust who has my best interests at heart, and she's proven time and time again for my SI, you know, to really realize that she knows what she's talking about and she can guide me in correct ways. And even like now, like she says this is a good way to do it, I say okay, and then I don't do it. But I certainly, it depends on the source from which I'm getting the control. But let's say my teacher is just saying do it in a certain way, and it's obviously not as efficient or effective for my learning. I'm just going to be like, no, I'm just going to do it this way, unless it like reflects on my grade, right? And it's the same way for like, it's definitely heavily dependent on the source. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig that. I sort of feel similar about that, depending on the source. Yeah.
Well, and the purpose, right? So
yeah,
you mentioned grading. So we love games, and there, you know, metrics matter. So if we're going to get a mark, it's, you know, we have to write something in AP style, then we'll figure it out.
Yeah, you know, I'm in an AP class, and it's just like I finally get to experience like the actual in-depth logical train of thought writing that allows me to build on rather than follow a certain formulaic plug and play thing that my teachers used to do. And like there's less of like in American's education system, or at least at my school's curriculum, there is this idea that like you have a very structured intro and you need to have a certain style thesis of like this is my main claim for these 3 specific reasons. And especially in a rhetorical analysis essay, what they say is like you need specific rhetorical devices. But then in the AP class, which is a breath of fresh air for me, unlike many other kids, it's like, oh, I can finally look at the reason why the rhetorical devices are there, because they're devices. They're not the ideas and the reasons for them. And they're not they're somewhat of the means, but they're not solely the ends aren't solely dependent on like the usefulness, for lack of a better term. I'm struggling on words.
Yeah, that actually, what you brought up there, trust and transparency, I think, are 2 important factors to me for like my relationship with control. Like you said, Andy, like if I trust the person who's trying to control me and I trust their intentions, then I'm okay. But I also sometimes want to know why they're trying to control me. And like you said right there, you understand now the reasons for why you're doing it this way, and that's transparency. And so if I know those reasons, then I can feel like, all right, as long as they align with my own values and like what I feel is, you know, these are good reasons, they're legit reasons, then I'm okay. But sometimes you'll have people that try to control you for, like, I'll give an example. Last year, I had this vice principal I worked with, and this was in we were kind of butting heads a little bit throughout the year, and I'd only worked with him for 1 year. And then suddenly when the coronavirus hit here in Japan, like they just canceled all the classes on the first day of March, and I was quitting the job at the end of March, and I was done. I had nothing to do. And yet this guy was like, one day I came to work, I was like 30 minutes late. I had nothing to do. I mean, I had to clean my desk. It was going to take me like an hour, and I had like 4 weeks. And this guy like just called, like right as I walked in, he's like, Bryan, you know, all this is in Japanese because I'm in Japan. He's like, Bryan, you're going to have to take an hour of overtime, and like, you know, totally embarrass me in front of everybody. And I was just like, no, we're not doing this right now. And I put my bag in my desk and I said, you come in here. And I called him into the principal's office. and because I felt like he could have so much easier controlled me by just calling me over to the desk, not in front of everybody, and said to me like, you know, you got to be on time, or is there a problem? And there actually was a problem that morning. I had a situation with my son that morning, but he totally embarrassed me. So that's a situation where I didn't really trust him, and I can tell you that his reasons were not good reasons in my opinion, because I don't have anything to do. Like, who cares if I'm 30 minutes late? You know, I was going to stay 30, like the way my job works, like during the holidays is like I could show up an hour late and then just work an hour later, and that's what I was going to do, you know. But so, you know, trust and transparency I think are key for me. As long as I have those two things and understand the reasons why I'm being controlled, then I'm okay. But if I feel like they're not legit, then I will draw. I'll just be like, all right.
For me particularly, I have to, like, I'm a big proponent for like knowing the reasons why for things to be able to do them more effectively, because I think for all of us, we have to know where we're going in order to understand what we're doing to get there. Because if we don't know where we're going, there's no reason to do this, and it's aimless.
That is true. And so, Kendrick and Mickey, your opinions on this?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is for whatever the control is coming from, or orders or question, whatever it is, to understand the root of it, and for whatever the end goal it is to align with what I think should happen. You know, if I agree, I don't mind it. You know.
See, here's what I'm noticing. I think if you put an ENFP in a situation where they are controlled, they will kind of push back. But if you ask them a question like, how is it like being controlled? They'll start to answer philosophically because they're not actually in the situation. So they're not.
I may have
there's a saying.
Control.
Yeah, because there's a saying that when you tell an EP what to do, if they don't agree, they'll do the opposite. But I don't know how true that is.
I think IPs are stronger with that. An IFP would be a lot stronger in doing the opposite thing. I would push back and question and interrogate and figure more things out before. My default isn't just to get stubborn.
Right.
It takes a lot.
My default is definitely to ask why, and if they don't tell me to ask why, I do exactly what they say and not at all what they mean, just in spite of them. I try and make it fun for myself rather than like putting in all of the effort to like not like be very defiant and going back, because TE has definitely experienced that before and has been like, that's way too much effort. And it's not I don't think as satisfying as just doing exactly what they say and not at all what they mean.
Exactly. And so, Kendrick?
I think it bothers me when they're using control to abuse their power. Not because they're trying to necessarily have a positive result out of this, but just because they're trying to enforce it. So I'll give you a concrete example. I was traveling in Madagascar, and right as I get through immigration, the immigration staff starts trying to shake me for a bribe, right? So of course I say no. And then I get through the security, and then this guy grabs my bag without asking my permission, just starts walking away with it. And then he takes me to the end of the gate and he said, okay, give me some money. I'm like, no, you get nothing. And I took my bag and I go, right? And then later on, when I was flying out of the country, I got food poison actually. So I was literally crawling in the airport because I had chills, my skin was like pale, I was dying, I had nausea. And while I was crawling the floor, literally going through security, they were asking me for a bribe, right? Like I'm already like dying from food poisoning, and this ass hat is asking me for like money, right? And then so I said no, and so I give anyone any money. So yeah, so when they're abusing their power, I don't like it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Like all areas of my life, and the one that bothers me the most is also FE, like when someone's trying to make me adhere to the tribe values, like. That's not my value. I don't care about your values. Screw you. I have my own value system, and I follow that. I don't care about being pretentious. I don't care about making an image. I don't care about looking good in front of other people. Screw all that shit. Like I don't want any of that. So if you're gonna put that into me, you know what? The only thing you're gonna get is a middle finger, because I'm not gonna follow any of it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I've even had employees try to socially shame me into them getting their way. And not just back. That's when I push back and do the opposite. If you try to use social pressures to convince me that I'm a terrible person, or to, exactly, using shame against me, it's like, you can't really shame me that much. I mean, you can try, but you can get me mad.
I can so relate to that, like living in Japan, because that's just the culture here is so like that's their number one go-to is like
honor shame.
That's what he was trying to do, is like shame me in front of everyone. And
so
the
he did it in
normal
front of
Japanese
everyone.
reaction would have been like, I'm sorry. But I was just like, nope, F you, man. Come to the principal's office.
Yeah, and definitely like when I'm, you know, I think a lot of FP people have a huge connection to shame in terms of like what other people think is kind of my understanding of FE, like part of it. And then they watch me go up like on stage and whatever and just not care. And then when I mess up, like 2 stories that I want to tell. So my first one is I was when I was in middle school, I was doing a theater camp and I totally forgot half the lines. So I was like, I literally turned to the audience, was like, this is where I always mess up, I'm sorry. And then I continued to where I did remember the lines. And of course, that was embarrassing and I wish it didn't happen, but I just moved on quickly. And I just had everybody backstage like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And then this is one of my favorite stories to tell, just from like the ENFP's superpower of not having a lot of stage fright. So in French class, right? I'm going to make this very quick for the sake of time, but in French class, we were like doing a little skit in French. And you can put as much effort or as little effort you want, and you were allowed to bring in like props and like food as long as you cleaned up after yourself. So there was this group of girls who really wanted to make the class laugh and stuff. They got up there and they threw pies in each other's faces and a whole mess, and they cleaned up. So then 2 or 3 groups after, like you volunteered, I had taken a sedative pill. Had a sedating effect. I have bipolar, by the way, so I manage it through medicine a lot of the time. So I had already taken a pill, so I was like almost conked out on the floor. I was like, I just want to get this over with so I can sleep, because that was all we were doing in class. So I got up there. I was like, come on, my partner. I went up there, and for our props, I had paper, and I made a circle, and then I wrote food on it. And then I wrote decorations and stuff. And there were magnets. So I walked up there, slapped the magnet on there, was like, and then I just used my horrible Marge Simpson and made the entire class roar. And it was hilarious, because when I got back to the seat, because the group was sitting next to me, they just had a death glare because I got a better reaction. I just didn't try. But that's kind of the power of, I think, having really strong and healthy FI is what a lot of people admire and seek, in my opinion, and what I've experienced, is that level of self-confidence and that level of self-assurance, because FE people are very attracted to what others are thinking, doing, and feeling. So they want to latch on to that more than anything.
And we have an ability to express it as well, which is fairly unique to ENFPs, I think. As in terms of actually expressing and emoting and that energetic activity.
Yeah.
Cool. And so we're getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to try to go through them.
Yeah, let's. I'm looking at chat as well on my other screen, so yeah. If you like see me dart over
FE is not evil. I appreciate a lot of people using that function in healthy ways.
I love FE. It can be
don't
very
try
good
to screw me with FE. That's all.
Well, I don't like unhealthy FE. Let's move on.
Yeah. And so what are some methods, activities you use to develop your inferior SI?
That's such a good question. I'll start, because I've actually been thinking about SI a lot lately. And I tend to wonder that, just real brief, I'm in my 40s, and I think that when you reach your 40s, maybe that's when you really start to develop your 4th function. Just a thought. But for me, 2 things that I do to develop my SI are, what I think of is getting in touch with my body, so meditation. And for an ENFP, I suggest I don't meditate for a long time. Like, my meditation is 10 minutes, if that. Like, I have my timer set for 5 minutes, so it's like I have to do 5, but I'll stretch it out to 10. And before I do the meditation, I do the Wim Hof breathing, which is, I don't know if you guys know that, but you do 30 breaths in, and then you hold your breath for 3 rounds. Hold your breath as long as you can. And that kind of really gets me like totally into my body and slows down that ENFP monkey mind. and then I'm able to meditate. And when I meditate, this is all stuff I've developed this year, by the way, as far as like my strategy. I continue to lay down. Like I don't, because I've had some knee issues this year, so I couldn't sit Indian style for a couple months. And then I just realized, I'm like, as long as I'm awake, that's all that I care about when I meditate. You know, like who cares? You know, a lot of meditation people get really into their own technique and like, this is how you must do it. But, you know, ENFPs, we don't really follow musts or shoulds so well. So I just keep laying down and I stay focused on my breath. And then the other thing I do is I get out in nature. I spend a lot of time in nature. And I go and I sit by rivers, and I live in a river area, so I'd love to go to the beach if I could. But where water is running, because that also kind of like keeps me in touch with my body. And so those are my two things.
I feel you on that hiking part or going out into nature, because I do the same thing. I feel like I don't have access to certain parts of myself if I don't hike. Like it closes, part of me is gone, you know.
What I think about SI is it's the very detail oriented, and especially like taking care of your body and its basic necessities. I love the way that Heidi references it. It's like SI is the way that it's the thing that keeps you alive, really. So the way that I develop it is I just kind of less often than I probably should sit down and just work and like do the stuff that gives me a visceral, like, I don't want to do this. And then as I do it, it becomes less of an aversion and more cathartic. And I think that's how you should develop your SI. And especially like with habits forming, it's definitely like just that push through.
Yeah. I've heard for ENFPs, their SI is sometimes like an all or nothing, like inferior functions tend to be an all or nothing in terms of they tend to either neglect keeping the sensory in order at all, or they overly keep it in order for a while and then later like they completely let it loose. So it's like an obsession or nothing at all.
Yeah.
And so Kendrick, what is your experience with inferior SI?
I'm doing two things to work on it. The first one is, you know, SI is a thing, it's like thing related, right? So I'm keeping all my business receipts, all my government documents, and I put them in folders to make sure that, you know, when someone asks me for that, then I can provide it. Then I don't get in trouble with the law. And I'm scared of like, you know, being controlled, you know, like even when I hear the sirens of the police, even though I didn't do anything wrong, I freaked out, right? Because, you know, I don't know, it's like an AP.
And you're wild.
Yeah. So I always try to keep my documents when it comes to things that could get me in trouble with the law. I try to keep it. It's not very good, but I do my best. And then the second thing I do is I try to have an exercise routine that I do 5 days a week. So I go to the gym, I do cardio 4 days a week, at least 20 minutes. And then I lift weights 5 days a week. And I find that as long as I do that, it's kind of like a battery. And if I do that, then I have the focus to work on, you know, my blogs or my YouTube channel, because if I don't do that, I get really scattered and I can't focus. But I notice that when I exercise, then I can focus. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Heidi, the ENFP, does weightlifting as well to cure the monkey mind. So Kyle, what is your answer to this question? And then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, I think there's two aspects going on when anyone talks about developing functions. On the one hand, there's the actual mechanics of the function itself. So when we're talking about introverted sensing, that is going back into your experiences, internalizing that, looking for patterns within those past experiences. Then there's also the values that SI has. And I feel like our inferior function is very aspirational. So sometimes it feels like we're developing, but we're actually using mechanically our other three functions to get there. Probably don't have time to get into that in the big way. But yeah, I kind of split it into those two things. I don't spend a lot of time on the actual mechanics of introverted sensing, like perceiving the world through that, because it's difficult. But with the all or nothing thing, definitely my whole life, things like I'll go to the routine like crazy, and things like dressing or eating, because I don't want to stop and consider so my back seat works together in that I'll wear the same thing every day if I'm at work. That doesn't bug me at all. I don't care about expressing in that way. So I express other ways. If it's more effective, so again, my TE hops along. My lunches, I'll eat the same thing every day or have the same breakfast every single day. It's just way more convenient that way. I can focus on being creative where I want to be creative, where there's more value. So I use a lot of SI habits, as in repetitious, like repeating that sensory thing day after day and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. I actually have done a little bit of meditation. Got into it a little bit this spring when I was going through some crazy intense stress and depression. Moving 2,000 kilometers away it was a pretty big deal. So I had to kind of figure out how to handle losing some roots and connections. And then COVID has made it a little bit trickier yet. Because I find, even though I'm not socially extroverted in a small E sense, I still need people around and I need energetic connections. And so I think SI plays into that. But yeah, as far as values go, I can get there the long way around.
So you're saying, you're saying like you might get there to SI, sorry, in my throat. You might get to SI through FI because you keep mentioning values, and then introverted functions help you get access to the other one. Yeah. Kendrick's a part of objective personality, and when they say that when your two introverted functions are working together, they call it sleep. So apparently, like, you can access your SI by going to sleep with your FI. So that would be pretty cool. Also, okay, next question, just because there's so many.
Yeah. Okay, we're interesting people. We need to.
Yeah. So, hi Paul, and hi Kim too. So they're wondering what the cognitive functions would be linked to in terms of empathy. What are your thoughts?
I have one question.
Yeah.
What's the first one mean? The contextual? I'm just not sure of the wording of that.
Can you keep that question on the screen?
For sure.
And was it supposed to be tree or three?
Contagion. That's what it is. Okay. That makes so much more sense than what I read it as. So if I'm understanding,
everyone has a different definition of empathy. So I guess they're referring to a specific school of thought here, or what?
I guess taking the words at face value, because I'm not sure of the specific school of thought. When we look at emotional contagion, I think just a brief overall, like the way that the ENFP produces empathy is derived from the FI, but it expresses itself through the NENTE, and that's how we connect with people. So when we're looking, and especially like SI allows us to look back and understand other people through past experiences. So when we're looking at empathy, I don't think it makes sense to put it in specific cognitive functions, but we can look, I guess, at like how cognitive functions specifically enable this. So contagion, again, what I said was NENTE, its ability to see the possibilities as well as express them in a organized and thoughtful manner, and considering many possibilities. Emotional empathy definitely, I think, corresponds heavily with FI, in that it allows the FI is definitely like your values and your emotion in terms of how you process it. So I guess we process the way that we feel, and then we look through the other lenses of the other functions to see how other feels, and that's where the empathy derives. And then cognitive empathy, I'm not even sure that, I think all empathy is cognitive in the way that it works. I'm not sure of that terminology, so I won't comment.
Depends on your definitions.
Yeah.
I mean, I would feel that we are the ones that infect other people from the emotional contagion standpoint. What I've heard people say is that, specifically INFJs, is that what an ENFP kind of goes through is we can recognize or find a resonance in what another person is experiencing, and we, for me, I feel it's more subconscious of my own personal past experiences, but the emotion itself resonates, and so I can bring up what I perceive another person to experience, but it's not really their emotion. Whereas for an INFJ or similar types, because they can perspective shift, they explain it to me as if they actually they actually experience what you are experiencing because they can get outside of themselves. We can't really get that much outside of ourselves, maybe with drugs or something, but I haven't tried. So yeah, that's another story. As far as cognitive empathy, I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from, but if it's about empathizing with other people's ideas or holding space for different points of view, then I think we hold a lot of space for, especially people that we know what their motivations are. Like for us, it's, you can believe what you want as long as your motivations are good. We'll just maybe have a discussion and have a conversation. We won't throw people under the bus because they disagree with us, but we'll throw, but we'll turn around if you are just trying to cause trouble or you don't care about anyone else. Then.
And I think that's part of the reason why ENFPs are contagious and good listeners. Is because instead of just sitting there and bearing with other people's talking, we're usually genuinely interested in like what the other person is thinking, what they're feeling, because it's something that is inherently interesting to us. I don't really know how to explain it other than it's like inherently interesting. And that's why I can be with my friend and be just completely silent. And then they, over the phone, right? And then they just get the vibes of like, he's actually listening to me. And that's why a lot of my friends and I have a large emotional connection and background. And that's why they continue to stay with me, even when I was in bipolar spirals and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it's also maybe a part of the extroverted intuition too. It likes variety, and so sometimes it'll like different things or different people. Like you know, a lot of people say the word birds of a feather flock together. Like ENFP is like the opposite of that. They like to have as many people from different backgrounds as possible.
And that's exactly why I'm in debate.
My wife doesn't share any cognitive functions with me at all. She's an ISTP. No, and I love it, right? Like it's difficult at times, but I really appreciate, like, I actually like being, I like it when people push against my ideas too, or when they have something that's totally different. Like, I actually genuinely appreciate that. When it's not in a judgmental, like everyone needs to believe what I believe way, but if it's an open thing, it's like, wow, this is Christmas. Someone has a different idea.
We have less of a need for harmony and more of a need for a healthy disagreement in order to come to a harmonious understanding, whether that is we agree on something or we agree to disagree, because we realize that the disagreement is how we get to the harmony.
I wouldn't say it's actually not harmony what other people are pitching. We don't need unity, but we love harmony, right? Don't give me this, monotone thing. Give me a 4-part harmony, probably 16-part harmony and a few instruments thrown in too.
And I think for me, what I like the cognitive empathy question, because I feel that the most, because when you think of like I love finding someone who like lives or does something that's completely different than what I would ever consider doing, because when you get a chance to talk to that person, and maybe like on the surface you're like, whatever they're doing doesn't make sense, but when you get to know them, you realize what makes them tick, and that if you like started with that same kernel starting piece that made them tick, if you had that, then you could see yourself in their position. And then from there, you could sort of bring them into your, like if they're a friend or someone you want to start seeing, you could bring them into your FI, because you're like, oh, this person, I understand this person, I get this person. They're honest, they're independent, they're deep thinkers, so I could connect with this person.
And they can say anything to you without getting offended then, right? Like,
yeah, as soon as they get there, then they can say anything. Because then you're like, I get exactly where you're coming from, and I get why you get there. I wouldn't get there, but I get why you got there. And you're being honest,
Yeah, that's lovely. And so Bryan and Kendrick, do you guys have any points for that question before we go to the next one?
I was just going to say that I developed my empathy a lot by fiction, by reading fiction, by watching fiction, by and writing it because that allows me to explore that side, that other side of the many sides of the human experience, and so.
So Studio Ghibli. Do you watch Studio Ghibli?
I do watch some Studio Ghibli. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Kendrick?
I think I don't have empathy unless I've experienced that hardship that person is experiencing to begin with, So I have to experience it first myself. I think a good example of like empathy with people with FI is like, I don't know if you guys saw that Michael Jordan documentary, but there was a scene where Reggie Miller shot the ball. There was like 1 second left. He gets the 3 in, and the whole crowd like erupts. But then there's Larry Bird standing there completely stoic. Like the whole emotion of the crowd did not affect him at all. And I was like, that's FI right there, because he knew there was 1 second left and Michael Jordan was going to get the ball next and they could lose. So there's no reason that he couldn't feel what the crowd was feeling. And that's how I feel, like the crowd is like erupting or like everyone around me is like being energetic. Like I don't get affected. I don't have that empathy. But like what I do see that someone is suffering and I can feel that their suffering is valid and it's something like I've suffered with before, then I have super empathy with that. And my empathy is not present. It's also like, even if I'm not there in the room with them, I still feel their pain. Mm-hmm. So it's not like FE empathy where, you empathize in real time, but then when you leave, like the feeling's gone, right? So it could be carried outside of that face-to-face interaction with that person.
I have one thing I want to say before we move on to the next question, specifically on what Kendrick said. So my personal experience when I'm like going through the empathy. So one, empathy is a learned skill for I think everyone. Contrary to popular belief, I had to learn empathy. It's just ENFPs are more natural at learning it and have a higher learn rate. So you learn it at a much younger age. Second, the way that I tend to get to the empathy when I haven't personally experienced what they were feeling was I start off from a place of sympathy and then I work in and I put myself in their place. It's that level of like putting each other in another person's shoes. And then you can feel like what they're feeling. And then you can get to that place of artificial empathy, but it's real enough that it's like real rather than just artificial and synthetic.
Because we're embodying that idea of being in that situation.
Yeah, and I'll even feel like in the body. Like, so really quick, I know.
Was that SI?
What I like to say to my friends is like, I can walk into a room and have a person with a broken bone and like a broken leg, and then I'll start to have my leg throb, right? Like, it's automatic at that point. It starts to sort of seep into your physical body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very visceral if you do relate. Yeah, and
if I want to.
Yes. You can turn it off.
Yeah, it's a very conscious process. Like FI has a greater degree of control over its value, its emotional, like what it'll let affect it. Whereas FE, it kind of feels like for me, it's like you can't really help but get infected by other people's emotions. FI has a deliberate control whether it turns it off or on to care about you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so ENFPs, do you find it difficult to be present in the moment?
Depends on the moment.
It depends on the moment, and it depends on your definition of the present moment. Because like for ENFPs, being present in the moment, at least for me, is like I'm experiencing the world around me, but in the moment I'm focusing more on the meta and like what's the other person thinking and going in that like thought spiral. And when an SP is present in the moment, they're thinking of like what's going on around them in the physical world. So in one sense, for the like a lot of people being in the present moment, I'm not very good at it in that colloquial sense, just majority of the world math wise. But for like a specific set of people like ENFPs, I'm ever present in the moment in many different settings every single time. and it's just an internet web, not internet, but like a web of just spiral thoughts going to and from people. And that's just how any works. And especially with the empathy that you're choosing to give to another person, I think it's less like you choose to begin with it, but you can choose to turn it off later. But yeah, that's my thought.
But can any of you guys talk about a time when you weren't present?
Oh, yes.
I think
I've walked into a plethora of doors. Sorry to talk over you, Mickey. I've walked into so many doors. I've been looking straight ahead, and I walked into a door. Yeah, because then what I sort of take from that one goes back to the the first question, where it's like being controlled or being authentic. Like when you're in a place where you feel like, I don't know, maybe like going to bars or going to like a club or something like that, where you feel obligated, where there's like a social pressure to behave a way, and then you're not feeling it that day, so you just like disconnect from that space. It's almost like you're not there, like you're there but you're not there. Like you just start. I avoid those situations. No, but if you end up in that, yeah, that's a nightmare. Right? For me, when those it's almost cathartic at times, but yeah. There's a difference between, I would say there's a massive difference between cognitively present in the moment and physically, spatially present in the moment. Like I can hyper focus like crazy in an interesting conversation like this, and I could totally ignore like very selective sensory stimuli. I can just ignore my bodily functions if I want to. Like I'm busy doing something, so I'm not gonna, if I have to go to the bathroom, I'll just hold it in for an extra hour or two, right? Like,
I was gonna say, like,
physically turn off my senses.
What Nikki just was talking about, to me, like that's a ENFP superpower. Like if you get in a situation that you feel like this is kind of lame, like the ability to get out of that present moment and like, is kind of, to me, I do that all the time, because then I can actually enjoy being in a moment that, okay, everybody else is doing this thing. I don't really want to do it, but I'm here. So I'm going to go drift off into Fantasyland or whatever. And I can still enjoy the moment, because I'm using my time. Bored. Yeah, I'm not bored.
You're never bored because you got your mind on your side.
I feel like the question is more asking about, like, do we have trouble, like, when we want to be in the moment, but we can't?
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Right. And
in the conversation, I literally just forgot I was sitting in a chair and looking at a computer. I forgot I was in my room. It's just like
when you were saying,
it's not real.
Yeah. When you were saying squirrel, my friend calls it ADOS, attention deficit. Oh, shiny.
Wait, what is that? I was like, oh.
But our shiny tends to be a little bit more like cognitive, the world of ideas. Like it's kind of weird to me. Before I knew about cognitive functions, I was like, well, I'm pretty much 50-50 introvert, extrovert. But for NE DOMs, our external world is actually, a lot of it takes place inside of our minds, but it's not about us. It's about the world, like the external world of ideas.
Right.
And so it feels like we're always present with ourselves. But I would say probably the people around us would say, oh no, the ENFPs have a harder time being present in the way that they define present. But we're following our stream of consciousness. We know where we're at, I would say, for the most part.
I can speak to, actually, this is a little bit of a difficult topic for me, but getting a little personal, like with my family issues, like I have 2 kids and my marriage, like I know sometimes I'm not present for my duties as a father because I will be too much, like I'll get myself distracted. Like I'll be watching a YouTube video or something, and then I have to go do my father duties, but I'm still thinking about what I was watching. And so I'm not doing as good a job at like focusing on my kids or whatever, or attending to what my wife asked me to do. And so then an hour later, my wife will be like, hey, did you know that you left the water running? I'm like, I did,
Or those 3 things I said to you. You said things to me. Yes, I vaguely recall this.
Right.
I'm curious if you guys, resonates with you guys. is like the sort of allocating a percentage of brain power to do certain things. Like sometimes if you're in a really good conversation or something like that, 100% of your brain is literally on that topic. But if you're like sort of this disengaged function, maybe there's like 20% of your brain is doing that, so it's just enough to blink and breathe. And the rest of it is like, and it may even start to scatter, like you have different thoughts in your head and they're each sort of focusing on their own with the power that they have.
Yeah. And how about you, Kendrick, your relationship with being present?
I'm never present. I don't know what to say.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? But when you say present, I'm never present. What do you mean by that?
Well, I've really tried. Sometimes I would eat and I would try to, really taste the food I'm eating. Really,
right.
Yeah.
Tasting food.
I'm just shoving it in my mouth and I'm just like watching something, or, sometimes people tell me stuff and I'm not really listening to them. I'm just, but it seems like I am, because I have NE and I can kind of piece together a few things and repeat it back to them. And, when you repeat back things to people, it seems like you're paying attention, but you weren't really, but it keeps the conversation going. Like I do lots of interviews, right? So, like now you know.
You're just telling on yourself right now?
Yeah, get some
well, the question is, you go really silent all the time, Kendrick. So are you present then, or are you like?
No, that's right. You just
so that's what I was. So when the topic of presence actually came, I was trying to listen to you guys one at a time. I was trying to concentrate because I was like, okay, let's be present for this present talk.
You're not playing a video game at the same time right now or something?
Yeah.
Especially if you're already figured out the person. Like sometimes people are sort of like Rubik's Cubes, and then as they're talking, they get solved, and then you're like, all right, I already know what you're gonna say. Like, because I know you. As soon as you said the first 3 sentences, I already knew what you're gonna say. So I've had times where like I've been on the phone, right, and then like I have to put the phone down real quick, and then like go do something, and then I don't hear the rest of what they said, but I could keep the conversation going because I already knew, like, I know everything you could possibly say. I already solved it in my mind.
Yeah, that's why
and then when they do something unexpected,
like really slowly, because when they're talking so slow, you're like, I already know what you're gonna say. Just hurry the F up, like.
Oh yeah.
You want to be polite and let them finish, but you're like, I know every single thing you could possibly say. I've already.
Yeah, I get you, man. It's annoying. It's annoying. Like people think ENFPs are annoying because we talk so fast, but you guys are annoying. We're talking so slow. So hurry up.
Yeah, think of what you're gonna say as you're saying it, like we do, and develop your ideas on the fly. Like, how hard is that? Like, come on, guys.
Kendrick, in your objective personality thing, so would you say your FI? The categories, the 2 types are like movable or immovable. I prefer those definitions over masculine, feminine. But do you want to talk about your FI, how that relates to your objective personality? Sorry, just interrupting the interview here, but
it helps us understand too, because I want to know more than use that.
Well, with sexual modalities, you have 2 feminine functions and you have 2 masculine. Your tribe function is your FI, and then your tribe function is your TE, and your self function is your FI, and they're opposite. So if your FI is masculine, then your TE automatically is feminine, and vice versa. And then there's also NE versus SI. So NE is used for gathering new information, and SI is used for organizing facts. So if you have masculine SI, then you automatically have feminine NE, and vice versa. So, there's different combinations, obviously, for that. And based on the combination that you get is what you're going to have. So if you have, masculine NE and masculine FI, a double feminine ENFP, then when you're consuming information or gathering information, you are going to be more aggressive about it. But if you have feminine NE like I do, I tend to forget concepts and patterns all the time, which is annoying. But my SI, which is my memory when it comes to numbers or facts, is pretty good, even though it's right at the very bottom because it's masculine. So that's essentially how it would work.
And so when you say masculine and feminine, from what I understand, masculine is more the immovable or not necessarily attack focused, but more aggressive. The feminine is more movable, malleable, receptive. That's really what it's going for, right?
Yeah, there's also a certain memory aspect to it. So, masculine NE, for example, would be very good at remembering a lot of patterns and concepts. They might even come across as NI. And So there's a memory aspect to the functions as well.
Because I just find it interesting how your responses, you phrase them a little bit different than some of the rest of us. So I'm wondering if that plays a little bit into our slightly different flavors of FI. Like I don't know.
I feel like everyone that Joyce is interviewing right now has masculine FI. I don't know anyone here that has feminine FI. Like feminine FI is very different. It's no one here is very like in your face aggressive. So that would be someone with masculine TE and feminine FI. So there's no one here in this interview that I can see that has that. Like no one here is like in your face, shovey or aggressive. But when it comes to our identity, we're more pushy about it. With that being said, I do. So earlier, so I have demon FI. So demon means it's not as confident as if it's a savior. So I'm a jumper ENFP. I'm an NETE. So I don't have that natural confidence as the standard ENFP would have. And I can do the public speaking thing, but inside I am dying. Outside I look confident, but inside I am dying. So, and then I'm like always scared of like what the tribe thinks or if I'm providing enough value for the tribe. So there is that underlying fear because I'm tribe above self, and what the tribe thinks does matter to me. At least more so when I was younger. As I got older, obviously my FI is developing better. So that's
now, is that linked to your TE that you're trying to have a metricized contribution in the real world? Like you're actually, like is it an insecurity around the TE?
It's more like I want to make sure I am actually helping you, and
like you're useful.
Sorry,
like you're useful.
Not so much useful. It's just that I'm helping you. Like you're gonna get a tangible result from my advice. You're not gonna get something useless.
Well, that's
like,
the same thing.
Sorry,
and you were sorry to derail this a bit. You didn't know your Enneagram either, though, right? Because there's like so much layers of personality.
I'm 7 wing 8. My tri type is 7, 8, and 2. So
okay, and your instinctual subtypes stack.
That one I am not 100% sure. I feel like I'm social, but I'm not 100% sure because I feel like I collect people. Right. It could be with the NET. So I like to collect like people. Like I go to Fiverr, for example. I have hired like so many people in Fiverr, for example. So I know who's a good hire, who's a bad hire.
Right.
Because
I'm definitely I'm strongly SX. SO is my second. So.
Yeah, I just want to ask Kyle, are you like a psychologist person or? Like,
no, I'm a Renaissance man. I do everything.
Oh, you do everything. Oh, you are a Renaissance man. That's right.
I research everything.
Oh, because you work for not Type in Mind, Psychology.
I don't.
You don't work.
No, I don't work. Actually, I ran a business for the past year, but I am now officially semi-retired for the winter until I figure out what I want to do next. So
that sounds very.
Keep investing. No, I need some time off.
Yeah.
Retail in the middle of COVID is really, really stressful. So, and I don't care enough about my product. Anyways,
we gotta go back to the questions or we're gonna be flooded. Polar TI, everyone's relationship with TI. And while you guys think about that answer, I just wanted to feature someone's comments because there's an ENFP in the side chat with really cool comments. So yeah. They said that, Kyle, I'm the same way with being able to repeat outfits and meals. I think we share this with a lot of INTPs as well. And the same ENFP was like, we can literally feel each other's pain as though it's our own. And NE is largely responsible for processing that from FI. Once we're done feeling it, TE might decide to chime in with a buffet of possible solutions with their NE. And there's one more.
With the feeling other people's emotions as if it's our own, it's only, I've been told multiple times by NIFE people that it's only a simulated version of what they experience. So we aren't experiencing that, but we feel at least like we're feeling like them. Just to clarify.
Yeah.
We feel like we're feeling like they feel, and we can express it, and then they can, we can kind of match it, but it's always our own.
Do you know how, like, when TI builds, like, logical models of things, I feel like FI sometimes, like, when it tries to understand the emotional experience of another person, it builds its own FI value model of how that person might be experiencing it. Whereas I think FE is more reactionary. FE will just automatically feel what the person is feeling without that need to model it in their brain. Yeah. Yeah, and so the same ENFP said, I wouldn't say FI is deliberative about what it chooses to feel or not feel about, but it's definitely selective in what it will not emote in response to all emotions in the environment. Yeah.
I agree with that too.
So on the TI question, oh, you're doing another one? Okay, I'll let you do that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to let that be seen too. I think
people
FE
are
is more
engaging with us. This is awesome.
Yeah, they're loving what you're all saying. I think FE is more likely to be affected by the broader emotional climate than FI, which zooms in to the individual level. 100%.
At least for SX instinctual subtypes. Maybe social subtypes are more tuned into the group. I'd clarify it that way.
Yes. And
but
so
I still think it starts from, I think the person said that it goes from FI to NE. I still think it goes from NE to FI. It just has to do with the sort of web branch thinking. And as soon as you could figure out the heart of where a person is coming from, then you could feel where they're coming from. Then you could simulate that feeling.
I think we always start with NE. Yeah.
That's
the easiest way to do it anyways.
Yeah, that's the way that makes sense. That's how we could get everyone. We could predict what you're going to say too, because they literally can be you in a way in our mind. They have like a duplicate of you in our head that could just tell us what you're going through.
Mm-hmm. Before I move on, Joyce, is there another comment?
Nope.
Okay.
TI.
TI. All right. So I first want to say that TI I think is really cool and really useful, and I wish I was good at it. And when I look at TI, I feel very exhausted, and especially with my friend, to bring up D&D again, because it's a very prevalent part of my life. I have a TI Dom DM, right? I have an INTP DM. And when we get my INTJ and I are within the same group, so we share ideas back and forth with each other at super high level, and we tend to look, just scan it with our TE and see what jumps out at us for the relevant information. The reason why that DM really doesn't like us a lot of the time, when we're doing D&D, is because when they look at the potential character sheet idea we give them, they look at each individual detail level, and then they try and scan for each of them, how will it work in this logical way? And the problem that occurs from they have NE, so it's each individual detail stems off from 50 different things that they have to consider, rather than TE where it's all right, well, we have this individual detail compared with that. Okay, we've seen the entire thing. Let's just synthesize it very that's bad TE, but you know what I mean.
And deal with the consequences later when it's applicable.
Yes.
That's
that is TE. I do that all the time. And again, I'm an A push, and TI's ability to recall facts is very impressive, and I see it as a very useful skill. And certainly I would do far better when I'm doing A push tests, being able to recall facts and then use those facts later in terms of the AP model of seeing connections. But yeah, that's all I want to say.
What's ELLR? I'm sorry, can someone help me out with that?
So it's socionics. So with ENFPs and socionics, they're IEIs and they have TI polar. I know the socionics is not the same as MBTI, but it might, I want to see if it's applicable for MBTI ENFPs.
I don't actually understand about socionics. I got my INTJ friend, again, because he's still very prevalent, into Myers-Briggs, and then he found objective personality and then went into socionics through that medium. So my understanding of polar is it's your third cognitive function, and then the opposite of that is something that you're not necessarily inept at, but it exhausts you when you're using it and trying to use it with others, so you get tired quickly. Kendrick, you're part of the thing that does socionics, the channel, objective personality. That's the word. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. See if I got it right.
Well, I don't know anything about socionics, so
okay. Well, okay. Well, I'm sorry.
Back to TI. I absolutely love and adore TI. I profiled as an ENTP on the MBTI, Constantly. It was my persona that got me through high school because I have a very sensitive FI, but I was also able to shut down emotionally in high school because that's what was required by the environment. And I enjoyed being a know-it-all too. FI and TI have a lot in common and a lot of shared values. And there's a very fine line between factual truth and the truth of beliefs. And so I would say most of my life, and yeah, growing up speaking a TI language and just putting FI into TI language is actually at a live event with Personality Hack where I figured out that I was actually an ENFP and not an ENTP. And it was a very powerful thing for me just to accept that emotional side of myself. But that's a long story, so I'm not going to go into that right now. Some other time.
I can definitely like just feel the TI residual emanating from you. Not necessarily residual, but it's in a much more palatable way than my INTP friends who are just like fact connection. Rather than overarching fact. It's just that order that you put the things in, and then the order of which you put the facts and relevance, and which ones you choose to explain in detail and which one you not. In your brain.
And so at the same time as all of these shared things, like, so I married an ISTP. And so she, TI is the ocean that she swims in. What I don't appreciate about TI is the random access memory, or it's hard to handle, specifically when planning ahead. I've done 2,000-kilometer moves in the past 370 days or so. And, my TE needs to do things linearly. When I'm dealing things, I need to do it one step at a time. I have to break things down. I don't need to know every single fact about every single thing because my NE launches out of that, and it's an exponential growth of decisions and possibilities. And I'm trying hard to make decisions with FI, not with TE, because it's a lot more sophisticated. And so when TI comes in and brings all of this extra data in that I don't need right now, I get a little crazy. So we've actually been very helpful to figure this out. So it's like, why am I getting triggered by you when you're saying this? And she's like, well, why am I getting triggered when you're trying to ignore things and just do one thing at a time? So it's been very good for our marriage to understand the cognitive functions, like, big time. But yeah, I love TI. It can be frustrating, but I appreciate it. We need more of it in our life, in our society. Big time.
Yeah.
We need the hard truths.
Yeah,
I love hard truths of TI because it challenges me, and it's fun for the NE to now integrate that new data. And my wife researches like crazy. I research a lot, not like her.
For sure. Yeah, and for the writing styles of TE and TI, you can sometimes tell it through how someone writes. Denzel Mensa, he pointed this out. Like TE users, when they structure an argument through writing, they'll go like firstly, first and foremost, secondly, thirdly, lastly. So they'll have their points in a linear fashion. Whereas for TI users, they're like, they say a point and they're like, oh, and also this. Oh, and also this. Or at least TI lower down, like for FJs, because they're kind of like, they're coming up with the points as they're going. They don't really have a linear structure that TE tends to follow.
Well, I do copywriting for my wife's site. Like marketing and TI don't go together well at all. So I bring my gift of being able to see how are these words going to impact people. And so I help my wife communicate that way in a more effective and let's say a way that's more concise and direct and to the point. Instead, because people don't need to know all the data about your activity. They need to know what matters in the right order. And it's like, okay, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if she just wrote it, it's just kind of like all these data points, whatever.
I think that. It makes me think of because in the difference between a marketer and an engineer, like when an engineer makes a web page, they tend to it'll be like this sort of robotic kind of like it's not operating as if a human being's gonna watch it or gonna use it, and a good marketer has to have a good TE in that they will use the most effective means to get a person to to purchase. You don't need any extra details.
And I think the differentiating point between TI and TE is the discerning what is relevant for in the moment and what is needed for in the moment. And I think both TI and TE are needed to be two people with the same differentiating things are sort of needed in a business sense to be successful, because one is good at coming up with a bunch of points of data, and the other person, again, I'm going to go is good at synthesizing them. And that's especially prevalent when I'm in debate, and you can hear it when instead of going firstly and I go, this is my main warrant, these are my supporting points and the extensions on them. So I think that's the basic structure that anyone with tertiary and up TE are going to want to do. And you see me talk with my hands and I go first warrant and that's how I form my thoughts with my hands. A lot of I don't know, that's my TI, just going off on different things.
Yes, and for sure. And right now I'm being a total IJ, and I'm like, oh no, am I controlling so controlling chaos is the IJ. I mean, control is the IJ thing, and I'm a type 6 in the Enneagram, so I get anxious easily. So with these comments that people are leaving in the live chat, they disappear after a certain amount of time. So I'm like, oh no, I don't as we're going on.
Feel free to rein us in. We don't mind, really.
There's a timer with sand, and it's going down, and
we will keep going unless you rein us in.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read a couple of people's comments too. I thought that they were really good. So Shannon says, I experienced that as well. I'm not impacted by the collective emotions or temperature of other people in the room generally, but the detailed specific emotional circumstances and perspectives of individuals. Yeah. And Kim says that I'm socially introverted, but interacting with people I don't really find interesting, but become very much extroverted when I'm with friends and interesting new people. And Drew asks, on top of the being in the present question, do you ever feel that you rush an experience just to get to the end goal of it?
Not into a hike, just rush to the top of the mountain. That's interesting.
It depends on what the end goal is, because if my TE is very relevant of what I want, specific to the situation I'm in. So if it's something that I deem unenjoyable in the present moment, and there's some attainable, specific, concrete reward or end goal at the end, if it's not something that I'm going to enjoy, I'm going to just go, I want the end goal, and I'm just going to get the end goal, and it's going to be very quick, and there's that. But if it's something that's going to enjoy the experience, then of course I'm going to enjoy the hike, because the hike is beautiful, because the hike has so much to offer. It has, if you're hiking with other people, you're going to be able to talk to them and understand them even more. And it's just the process of which you get the end goal is what matters.
Yeah. I could be guilty of this on hikes because I'm into psychedelics, and there is a hike I go on every year. I go to Alamere Falls, and this is in California. I go every year in May, and at the whole point is to get to the falls, and the area where the falls is, it's gorgeous. It's like an oasis. You have to look it up online. It's there are a bunch of falls. It's a beautiful beach. It's just amazing when you catch it. And then I go with a group of friends, and some of them don't hike all the time, so they want to don't take breaks constantly or talk about how painful it is, because it's a while. The total hike is maybe I don't know, 10 miles, 11 miles. So it gets people kind of sore, and there's a lot of uphill, downhill. There's some awkward movements. There's a bunch of stuff, but you got to get there, because when you get there, it's going to be full worth it. But I feel myself pushing, no, stop stopping and look at this, pond, or to look at this. No, we need to get to the falls, because at the falls, it's going to be beautiful. And when we get there, it's going to blow everyone's mind. You guys pissing me off. I'm getting pissed off,
It depends on the point of which you're doing the experience to get there. It's the end is the point for the means, right?
Yeah. But if your goal is to go on a date with somebody, well, then you'll take your sweet time walking.
Yeah.
Well, if the goal is to get the girl, then you're obviously going to approach it in a way that's
do whatever they want.
Yeah.
You see, this is what happens. Like extroverted intuition likes to see variance and like alternatives. So like, oh, well, it could mean this, it could mean this, and then there's multiple interpretations of the same question.
Go ahead. Sorry, Joyce. Sorry.
Yeah. So my question was like, do you guys like find that thinking of going somewhere or thinking about all the possibilities of a plan or a day is more fun than the day itself? Like actually.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
planning stage.
Yeah,
and like seeing the plan work and like having all the different variables accounted for, so you can like choose and like plug what you need and have it be a functional thing, is very awesome and satisfying.
Yeah. I used to be my friends and I used to take road trips, and I was the guy that would plan like the whole trip, and I would spend like months beforehand. And I didn't, I always planned it in a way where I would leave it open-ended where we could go do stuff, but I'd have all these things that we could do. And I would often find that was just as enjoyable as the actual experience. When we actually got to the experience, it was like, yeah, this was all right. But yeah, the imagining of what it's going to be is like,
and providing options, right?
The possibilities.
Tabulating the possibilities is pretty epic.
Yeah,
it's very fun.
Yeah, the ideating, the thought experimenting is sometimes more fun than the experience itself. Absolutely. How about you, Kendrick? What are your thoughts?
Normally, I would agree with what everyone says, but I think it depends how grand the plan is versus the execution. So
no master plans here.
There was a time I took a year off to go travel to around the world. So I went to Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, and South America. And when I planned it for that 1 year, because I have to save up money, I have to make sure that I have enough frequent flyer points to use for the flights. So during the planning process, it was definitely fun, as what everyone would say. When you're planning something, it's even more fun than when you actually do the traveling stuff, or like the execution part. But I felt like, because I felt like it was so well planned that when I executed it, I almost felt like a music in my head. It was going like, like it was like a masterpiece. I created a masterpiece here, and I went to 75 countries. Within that 1 year, I did a lot of crazy shit. Like I was with a smuggler in Guyana in the Amazon rainforest. I got denied crossing a border between Cambodia and Thailand. Denied boarding an airplane. There's many times when I had like a 1 minute to switch trains in Europe, to go to the next train. And it would be like like a 100-meter dash to get there. And I had to like shove people out of the way to get to the train. And I would just jump right on the train, right the closest. So, when all this chaos was happening, I felt like it was a masterpiece. It was master, so I pre-planned it, but because ENFPs are good at winging it. They're good at improvising. So, it's not like NI when you have a plan, everything must be done according to the plan. For us with NE, it was like I had a plan, but the plan was a skeleton, and everything else in between could have been filled out any other way. And regardless of the fact that I was stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest when the smuggler that I was with got caught by the police, and I was stuck in the jungle at 2 a.m. Getting bitten by mosquitoes that lays eggs in your skin. Like regardless of that bullshit that I had to deal with or other stuff, I got out of all those situations, and I felt like it was a masterpiece, So there are times when the execution is better than the planning, and those are the moments, in my opinion.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I plan all the time. The other one, to put it on a smaller scale, for me, eating dessert, I take my time with dessert because I don't eat it just for some sugar high rush. I eat it for the flavors. So I will take my dear sweet time enjoying all of my desserts.
See, as a teenage boy, I just see food and I inhale it.
Yeah.
I feel that. I think there are like two separate parts to that. Like when the planning part is good in some ways for other people and for yourself a little bit, in that if you solve the Rubik's Cube of the people you're going with, and exactly like as soon as they see this, it's gonna blow their mind, or as soon as they try this thing. That's how I was with Thanksgiving. Just knowing like, like they're gonna like this drink, they're gonna like this food I bought. Like I sort of solve the people. Or if you solve yourself, that you're gonna love these things, but then also
providing that emotional impact.
Yeah. Because then you feel like you scored a point. You're like, yeah, I knew I figured that out. Because then you kind of win. But then also, this one thing I really like about hiking is the idea of getting lost and having to like figure it out, having to use the things that you've acquired over the years to sort of solve the way to get out. So that's when it's kind of cool not to plan, because as you plan the entire route, then every turn is accounted for.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. I realized, Kendrick, I didn't give you the chance to answer the TI question and your experience with TI. If you wanted to go into
it's love-hate relationship. Like, a lot of my friends are TI dominant. A lot of INTPs and ISTPs. They're really annoying in a way that, like for example, I had to plan my friend's bachelor party, and my friend was an ISTP, and because I had so many TI dom friends. So when someone is TI, it has to work for them. They don't care what works for the tribe. It has to work for them. They don't care about you or your ideas or your plan. If it doesn't work for them, they don't give a crap, right? So, I have a friend who lives in Seattle. I live in Vancouver, Canada. And I'm trying to get him to come to my friend's bachelor's party. And he said, well, it's going to be a 3-hour drive for me, and that's not going to work for me. And, my boss will probably say no. He'll probably won't give me the time off, and like a lot of assumptions, which is really annoying to me. Probably energy dominant. Making assumptions. So I told him, why don't you ask your boss? You don't know if he's gonna let you go or not. Ask him. He's like, he probably should say no. I'm like, did you ask? Go ask. So
was it an ISTP or an INTP?
He's an INTP, so I have to deal with like all these BS, right? And what really pisses me off too is I know he's gonna have more fun than everyone once the bachelor party starts. and it was true though. When the bachelor party did happen, he was the one that having the most fun. He was the most pain in the ass to get there, and he was the one that had the most fun. And it's always the same pattern with this idiot, And it's not just him; it's like a lot of my TI dominant friends. I have to go through this bullshit that I have to I have to make sure I meet all your demands for you to show up to some place that I know you're gonna have the most value more than me. So it's love and hate relationship. But at the same time, I like the TI people too, because they're fun to talk to one-on-one. They're just kind of like, I don't like the fact that they're very argumentative sometimes, but and also like I also don't care about puzzle solving. So like the one thing they'll have is like they'll have like a, I don't know, like a riddle that they're trying to solve, and I'm like, this is lame. I don't care about your riddle. It's lame, But they love it. So like I don't care to solve the damn puzzle. It's not fun. I don't enjoy it. Yeah. So
I like puzzles. I like riddles. Especially if I know the answer and nobody else does.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a really fun story. That's a joke, but I want to say it anyways. It's gonna take a bit, so.
Did you just write it?
What? No.
You just write the joke? Oh, okay.
No, it's from my great grandfather that I'm pretty sure is TI Dom, so it's vaguely relevant. I'll make it quick. So imagine that we're in the setting of like a tribal area, and you've got a warring tribe and you've got a farming tribe. So then the warring tribe, after a few years, is like, all right, we're gonna go attack this farming tribe. Then the farming tribe gets like blown to bits because they can't fight back, and then they get forced to use the resources to make a throne, and this throne is very ornate and beautiful, and it eventually becomes a symbol of power, dominance, and authority. Does it sound like a feedback loop?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know where that's coming from.
Probably not you.
Yeah. Regardless, I'll talk quieter. So the throne becomes basically the symbol for kingship, so whoever has the throne is the king. So then the farming tribe, having superior numbers because they were the slaves and they bred, they overthrew the kingdom. So when the king, the warring tribe king, found this out, what happened was the king was like, I gotta go hide this somewhere. So he tries hiding in all these stupid little places, and then he has an idea. What if I go to the witch doctor's grass thatched hut, and I just store it there? So that's what he does. He goes to the outskirts of town where they're never going to find it, is what he thinks, and it's there. So the farming tribe comes in, and they're like, oh, this king guy, where's your throne? He's like, I don't have it. And they're like, oh, you're useless. So they detain him, and then they go send search parties. And then they travel on the outskirts of town, and then one of the scouts sees a glint through the glass thatched hut because it's not super solid and not good at hiding things. So they end up burning the hut down, they find the throne, and then they win. Now, the moral of this story is you shouldn't stow thrones in grass houses.
Sounds like a TI
That's
joke.
close to the throwing stones and glass houses. I like that. Okay.
It's a very TI joke, and that's why I said it.
See, extroverted intuition is sometimes spottable when someone says like this is vaguely relevant, or when they say something but it's vaguely relevant to the topic you're actually talking about. And NE likes to go like to another connection as soon as it humanly can, and then so sometimes it doesn't stay with one point. It likes to like go to many points and try So I don't know. That was and nice joke. That was good too.
Yeah.
And have you guys ever given the TEB slap to someone?
I think we all have, to some extent. Certainly, it's hilarious in a debate round when they're like, "Oh, he said all of these," and I'm like, straw man fallacy number 1, straw man fallacy number 2, so many different things, and this is the reasons why their logic is invalid. But even if you do not buy that, judge, let me talk to you about why it's invalid for my case, and it's very fun to just watch their face just get despirited. I'm like, I lost. Not good enough. That's what we call in debate beating the baby seal. Defenseless debaters are the most fun to kick.
Oh, that's mean.
It's not mean because that's the sport, and I'm the nice one after round. I was like, good round, you made this fun.
Actually, that's really interesting because I'm like that in basketball. I play basketball, and I really like crossing people and like making shots in people's faces. So I mean, it's probably kind of similar. Where I get mean when it comes to sports, so I like to dominate.
Yeah. Well, you got to be a good sport about it, but like
at the end,
at the end, like you're nice.
But I like the question.
In debate, you get a lot of arrogant, like snob debaters, like I'm so much better than you. But here I am, just like I'm being nice and accepting in the round, and then I'm like, huzzah! These are all the reasons why you're wrong.
Yeah, then crushing them.
Yeah, I feel like I was like that more in high school. I don't crush people anymore.
You online game? Something. You gotta do something.
Joyce, what's the time limit? When are we supposed to end?
Whenever you guys want to.
Okay. I have no hard stops, so.
Me either. Probably around like midnight for me, but that's...
While we're still talking about TI and swinging back to FE a little bit, an original thing about either us getting triggered or not responding well. I think the way to control an ENFP is to give us encouragement and very positive feedback. That's kind of why the FE, like trying to, like you don't do it by shaming us or trying to put social pressure, that kind of thing. TI, if it ever actually does give encouragement, you know that there's nothing fake. It's always honest. If they actually come to the point of complimenting you or giving you encouragement, it's like well earned. And so there's nothing quite as rewarding as getting that positive feedback from a TI user. Because I just feel like they're incapable of faking it in that, they can't be dishonest about the FE part of them. They don't have the sophistication that an FE driver, a co-pilot, or even tertiary could use to try to manipulate us. And so when they actually do use FE things like encouragement or other ways, it's pretty honest because they're not trying to manipulate. They're just being, so just thought I'd throw that in there in the topic of TI.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. One of my good friends is a INTP or INTJ, and when like his compliments to me are like the ones that I seek the most, but they don't come that often, But when they do, I'm like, like I feel, because I know he's not going to say it, unless he really, really feels it and he's thought about it, like there's actually something there. So I've earned it.
If I get positive reinforcement and encouragement, I don't care if you tell me what to do. If you appreciate what I do when I'm doing it, I'll do all sorts of things that aren't convenient to me. Now, if you complain and try to get, if you give me a hard time when I'm trying to help, then it's just not worth it anymore. Then you just do it yourself. If you want it done perfect, do it. I want to bring myself, and I'll do my best. And you know. Yep. So yeah,
I agree. Can we tackle this one? I feel like everyone's answers for this would be really interesting.
For sure, yeah. How do you come to terms with not being able to explore and achieve all the possibilities that any foresees? Do you suffer from wanting to explore multiple ideological spaces at once and getting swamped?
Enneagram 7.
Yeah.
So is my interpretation of this question. Can you keep it up on the screen, Joyce?
Yeah.
Thank you. So my interpretation of the question is like being able to explore and achieve. Okay. So I've kind of come to terms with in my life, like I'm not going to be able to achieve all of the possibilities that I'm going to do. So I'm very selective.
Keep hope up.
So, I mean, it's something you got to come to terms with early.
It's America now. 17-year-old. Well, guess I can't do everything. That's so sad. No. You're all right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, I'll achieve what I have within my powers. Exploration, I do. ENFPs, I think we can all attest to, is like when we have multiple things going on at once, our heads can start to physically hurt. So when I try and like stop that from happening. And my life has less variables than probably one in college and above would have, just in terms of like my responsibilities for myself and then my responsibilities to the world around me. So I think it's more directed at sort of recreational and school activities on a smaller scale. But I don't think that I get this suffering from it. I think at some points it's more of a liberation when you like have the mental win and cognitive leap of like, just going to cut it off. I'm just going to stop thinking about this and move on. So yeah.
I mean, we see so many possibilities that I think that part, and we don't even want to explore all the possibilities that we can think of. I think it's more tied to the FI, is that we really do want to make an emotional impact. We want to, we'd love to say that we have a vision that we're achieving, and go for that, refined crystal of accomplishment and impact in the world, and bring the best of ourselves to the world. I think for me, at least, that's a bigger thing, and trying to refine that, figure that out, what that looks like. How do I set up a context in which I can achieve my FI goals? That's been a big part of my journey over the past year, and COVID definitely did not do me any favors at all, because I didn't plan for that. I don't plan for a ton of things, but I keep in mind that I came to a place in my business. I was working 70-hour weeks, which I have done my best to avoid my whole life because I value work-life balance. And I think my depression came a lot because I knew that there was actually no pathway to achieve my value in that current context. And that was harder than anything else. And so that's kind of where I'm in this phase right now, is I have to recalibrate, reconsider both my FI and my NE pathways, see how SI is playing into this, what kind of roots and ties do I need to accomplish my FI goals. As for the second question, I just explore multiple, I don't suffer from wanting to explore. I just do it. I explore multiple ideological spaces at once. I do get swamped at times when my NE hasn't anticipated well enough. There was a time in my life in my mid-20s, early 30s where I was probably doing outside activities. I think I calculated 16 times a month, and I also had 4 kids. So yeah, it was a bit much. I had to pare back and start doing less things that I enjoy, because I had to start choosing a bit more, because I enjoy so many different things. I tended to do too much. And it was like, well, I enjoy all these things and I'm good at all of these things and I'm needed in all of these things, or at least people say they need me in all these things. That's where I had to really push back and say, hey, I just can't do all the things that I'm good at and need and what people want me to do, or that I want to do. I just have to stop. So.
Yeah, I think the key part for you, it sounds like it, and for me is the FI part is, it's kind of leading with that instead, because then I could sit down for 24 hours straight and think of all the different things I could possibly do, and if you try to lead with that, it'll always overwhelm you at a point, and you'll always have so many unfinished things. But then if you sort of lead with FI, and maybe this is a little bit TE, and sort of looking at where you're needed, because that's why I want to be a therapist, is because it's somewhere where I see that I'm needed and I could be effective, and I could do it's on the pathway of the biggest thing I could do, right? Like, it may morph into impact later, but that is the pathway towards the biggest impact I could do with my limited thing, is knowing that you're limited, right? Because then, I think of this sort of connects like the archetype things that we talk about, Joyce, because there's an archetype called the creator, right? And its shadow function is like this excess of creation and not getting rid of anything, almost like hoarding. And I think that could be a little bit of an ENFP's thing, with at least with ideas and possibilities. You can just have too many, and you're like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. This person needs me there. Like, you could get overwhelmed by it, but you have to temper that with your FI, or just like setting priorities, and then the rest could just be hobbies, right? You could have a ton of hobbies, and life is really long. You could do other hobbies later, but then whatever things you need to do and whatever's going to be impactful to the world and the best use of your powers, go with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. I don't know about the rest of you, but the struggle I have isn't so much like, I know some people struggle with the idea, well, I'm not good at anything, or what am I good at? For me, it's almost like, well, I can figure out how to do pretty much anything that I choose to, and people give me positive, feedback on almost everything that I do. And so, well, who do I listen to, or to figure out what's my best? Because I don't necessarily want to leave out a key part of me, because I'm a complex person that brings lots to the table. I've done a lot of things, right? I have built a lot of skills. I kind of want to use all of it in some way. So
yeah, I think I'm going to give, for me, a thing that I've been learning the last few years that I think is great ENFP advice is learning to tell yourself no instead of yes. Because I think we are yes people, like we want to go, we want to follow all these different threads. But for me, I have this phrase in my head. I'm like, no, Bryan. And like this year, I quit my job in March, and then I had this free time. And I can tell you, spring, there were a lot of days where I would wake up and I would just start like kind of looking at my Facebook and looking at things. And the next thing I know it was like 4 hours into the day. And that's how I ended up realizing, like, okay, you need to start with the meditation, because that connects you to that FI. And then that also connects you like with, you'll focus basically. And then after you do that, then you can kind of more easily figure out which thread to follow, but that's again me, like my instinct when I get up is like, oh, what's going on in the world? I want to go look, and and like with these phones, it's so easy to just go down these various rabbit holes, and especially in like March and April when the whole world was going bonkers, and I'm like, oh, I'm what's happening in this country, and I should talk to this friend, and then a friend would ask me, oh, I'm doing really bad right now, can you give me advice? And then I'd be on the message for an hour and kind of helping them out. And the next thing I know, like I said, it'd be like noon. I'm like, I haven't even really gotten out of bed yet. So probably I should, so to me, like learning to just say no and like go into that, like meditation or whatever it is that slows me down is my own thing that I use for that. So.
Yeah. I like that comment that and ENFP put up, because then I think in certain ways, at least for me, what I've been discovering as I've aged is that you have to in some ways kind of tame your personality, because then honor it, like, because there are certain things you have to do. Sometimes you have to just, brainstorm or go off on all the different tangents you want to go on to. But then, I noticed that when I look back, the things that I look back on are, there's like that cliche, the things that you didn't do, or especially if you could have done it and you should have done it, like you're going to beat yourself up over that. So obviously, just naturally, without having, tamed your personality, your Ennie is just going to go wild. But then if you just, you have to sort of always keep in mind what your identity is and what is important to you, so that you don't, in a sense, like waste yourself and waste your time. Because then you could literally just, there's like a pull as an ENFP, at least for me, to just like sort of just be everywhere. Like it's just like your body's just slowly turning into like a gas, and you have to like pull yourself together and like do a thing, whatever the thing is,
But also, I think I like to allow myself, like, some days I'll be like, okay, today I am gonna have that day. Today I'm just gonna go Ennie crazy, and I'm gonna love it. And I'm not gonna at the end of the day, I'm not gonna be like, oh, you wasted that day, because it's my plan, it's my intention, and it's so fun,
Like
so
choice, the key there is choice and intention, though. So the only issue I have with this comment is it is a narrative. We do have an option, but NEE is our most sophisticated way of dealing with things, and it's fun for us. So it's our natural way, but we do have an option. And so once you've learned to develop and integrate, especially your auxiliary and your backseat functions, it is important to start transcending beyond your type and saying, well, no, we do have options in life. We're not stuck with this. But you have to develop it first, actually. You have to come to terms with it. So you're actually conscious of your tendencies. Similar to Enneagram, once it's very important to become conscious of what's at play, but that does not define you. Enneagram even more so than your Myers-Briggs type. Being conscious of your tendency and then transcending it, because
that's a good point.
That's true. And so, Kendrick, your opinion on Ennie starting multiple things, and like how would you recommend someone to kind of hone down?
I think the question I always ask myself is, I started a business before and the business completely died. I lost a lot of money. I went to debt. I work in the fitness industry. So I've been in the fitness industry for 8 years now. I teach spin, personal training, whatnot. And I had a job working in a commercial gym before. I absolutely hated it. So I quit and started my own business in personal training. But I forgot to ask myself this important question. And I think that's the main reason why it died. And that question is, can I still see myself enjoying this and liking this 10 to 20 years from now? And the answer was no. Like, I hated the fitness industry as a business. I like it as a part-time employee, maybe like once a week. That's like the sweet spot for me.
As a hobby.
As a hobby, right. And so now before I start something, I always ask myself that question. And if it doesn't pass that 10 to 20 year test, then I'm not going to start, because I'm just going to waste my time. I do schedule that once a week where I go and eat crazy, but I just feel like it's a drug at this point in my life. It doesn't help. I feel like garbage afterwards. There's no point doing it. Like I don't feel good doing it anymore. It's just like I'm like a drug addict. Like I need to get my fix. It's not good. So
can I quick follow up you?
Yeah.
So do you think that that's a function of just that's the way society is? You need to work 9 to 5. You need to be planning for the future, et cetera, et cetera. Or do you think that even if you didn't have to make any money, if you didn't have to make any money, you would let yourself go Ennie crazy every single day?
I would not anymore. Not
never do it.
Not like after what I now know. It doesn't help you at all. It doesn't even make you happy. You're just a crack addict. It stops making you happy at a certain. Once a week is good. If you're into fitness, you have a cheat meal, right? So once a week you go. Like even when it comes to friends, you have friends that are bad people. They're not. Good people. They're scum. They're trash. But you like to hang out with them because they're fun, I have a lot of friends that are scum, I think they're garbage. But hey, I love them, and I don't hang out with them all the time because I'm gonna absorb their garbage. I'll be garbage myself, But once in a while, you still have to live life, right? You're still human.
I do find that I make friends with people that other people really can't stand.
Oh yeah.
Like people that are complete jerks. I have a pretty high tolerance because I kind of know their hearts and where they're trying to, but they just don't execute well in their interpersonal skills. So I don't know. I feel like ENFPs maybe have a high tolerance for certain types of jerks, maybe the well-meaning jerks.
Yeah.
It has to be authentic, It has to be authentic.
Well, no, because it depends on what
yourself.
what you define as jerk. Like, if you define jerk as somebody who's socially inept and goes against the FE tribe, like, harmonious thing, and like they'll just say no to what the tribe wants, and then everybody else gets offended. That's just an NT half the time. So, I mean, it depends on what you define as jerk. If they're like actually mean people and mean spirited,
right,
then that's what we would consider jerk. And we wouldn't be friends with them. And I know a lot of SPs who are friends with SPs like that. So it just depends on what you consider jerk, and it definitely depends on intention, and especially depends on social dynamic and what other people consider what the word means, because language in and of itself is subjective, even when it tries to be objective.
I'd like to add an addendum to my comment too. First of all, yes, I love characters, so I have friends. Like, I'm the guy that, like, I'm friends with everybody, but like some of the people I'm friends with are just like the most miserable, biggest scum ever. But I still like them because they're entertaining, and also as a creative writer, like I don't like boring people. Boring people are the people I don't like. Like, but someone who's like a total jerk, who's gonna, like, when I'm out with them, is gonna cause trouble. Like that person, I'll just be like, all right, this is gonna be fun. I don't know what's gonna happen. I might have to run away at some point, but but it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be an experience. But
what
as
I've
far
found,
as
though, is that there aren't really boring people. With personality profiling in particular, you get someone that appears to be boring start talking about what they care about or what they're passionate about. If you can get them in that space, it's like, oh, you're really weird. That's awesome. You just pretend. You just don't say anything because you think nobody likes what you like. So
that's true. That's true.
They say that if you think someone's boring, it's because you haven't asked the right questions. Or maybe people are truly boring. Who knows? But so Kendrick said something about how, hobbies, ENFPs, and finding that, it's hard for them to find that one thing to commit to, because I find that when ENFPs, they have a hobby that they turn full time, then it starts to feel like a chore, and they're like, oh no, a chore. So I have like my ENFP best friend, she would switch majors a lot in secondary school, in college, and because like she'd have to go through it to know if she'd like it or not, and then if it didn't resonate with the FI, then you can't make her love it. So then she'd have to try another one. Yeah.
See, the trick is with ENFPs, I feel a lot of us, in order to know for sure if our decision is the right one, we kind of have to live it and experience it, and then do our resonance matching. It's like, okay, it's almost right, but there's something that's a little bit off. Yeah. It's so a lot of time it's tough in certain situations, but we almost have to experience certain things and actually live it. We can project a bit, but it's not the same as actually being there in the moment. And then that FI can say, oh, hey, this is close, but you're off on 3 things. And if it's too much off, you got to backtrack, and it feels like crap. Like,
right. A million percent.
Just to finish, I didn't actually get to what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
Any fast food crack day. For me, that's fueling my writing, because I use all the ideas I gather from all that, the rabbit holes I go down, and then that really gets me I can put that into my writing. So it's not strictly just me, going on a drug binge. It's, there's a purpose.
Yeah.
And you never know when it's going to come up again. That data that you
right.
True. It could just connect with a random conversation.
Right.
That's why I go back to, it has to connect with your FI, because if it connects with your FI, then whatever new information you're picking up or whatever tangent you're going on, it will connect at a point. Yeah. And then if you're not finding, and I guess one last thing, if you're finding too many possibilities in your NE, you probably need to start doing something sort of like you're doing it in writing. You have to do something big enough to contain all of those possibilities, right?
Right.
Because in writing, at least you can explore a lot of characters. You could go to different places. Me with therapy, you get to experience life through other people a lot. You know what I mean? Like you have to find something big enough to catch enough of your storm. You know, so it can like sort of be used.
The problem that arises when I try and write fiction with this mindset that Mickey is putting out is that my ideas sort of overflow and overlap, and then I have a hard time like planning out what I'm gonna write. And where I shine best is when I'm writing and just letting the writing flow rather than having the planned fiction story that's going to happen, because then I feel somewhat constrained, which is why I'm not very good at fiction and why I actually thrive when I make a plan for nonfiction writing and where I actually find it very enjoyable and cathartic. Certainly when I'm writing informative papers for school, it's one of like everybody else is like, oh, this just sucks and it's so boring, and I'm just like, this is very cathartic, and I enjoy writing informative papers, and I enjoy writing like rhetorical analysis papers, and then Mickey, Bryan, and Joyce, remember when I was like doing that expressive poetry? Poetry is something that doesn't necessarily need to follow a set plan, and you can just let it flow, and that's also where I find that's where my creative writing expresses itself. And I'm not a journal writer because I have another ENFP mom who I can talk to about these things, and she's forced SI on me. I'm going off into another thought that I don't think is relevant, but I just feel like basically the constant narrative in my life is mom, who's experienced the young ENFP thinks is gearing me towards, not having to experience the negatives that aren't necessary for like personal development. And then,
good mom.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Shout out to Sarah Dunn. Yeah. Yeah. And then a constant narrative I have when like I'm talking, like especially in debate, right? For my first year in debate, I was a Lincoln Douglas debater, and I didn't win a single round. And the constant narrative I told myself, which I knew was I was basically hiding from it when I was doing it, was like, as long as I learned something, as long as I had an enjoyable experience, it was worth it. I won in my own right. And then you had all the other kids who were, I had one, like a senior, who slammed his fist into a wall and like almost broke his hand. Like he was bleeding because it was his, I think, last debate or thing, and he didn't win he didn't go 4-0, which is like winning 4 rounds in the round. And I mean, the problem was he didn't learn from his mistakes. But beyond that, but and then like turning around, like they say like, oh, you're so mature for your age, you have so many like the real ideals and stuff that many kids your age don't have. And I turn around to myself and I'm looking at FI introspectively, and I'm like, well, they feel authentic in a way, but they all feel like lies I'm telling to myself and trying to escape from the real feeling. And it's hard to find somebody who, like, we're all ENFPs and Joyce here, and I'm saying this to the world when I'm saying this, but it's hard to find people in my life that are able to resonate as much as, the group of people in here. And I don't know, I'm spilling. But like, it's just the constant, and like it's like a thing I have where I'm like, I'm actually good at life, people, except I'm not, and I'm stumbling words. But yeah, that was my emotional spiel at nighttime when I don't have a thought in my brain. Fumes.
So many paths we could diverge off of that. But,
I know.
Yeah.
I didn't contribute to my writing experience. I enjoy writing. I'm good at writing. I love editing even better. I didn't put this in my introduction. I'm also a published editor. I supported a Kickstarter, an RPG source book called Clockwork Dominion by Reliquary Studios, and I was just a supporter, but they had said, "Hey, anybody want to look at this pre-thing?" And I gave like a list of 15,
is it its own game or is it an expansion to the Dominion game?
Tabletop RPG. It's its own IP. It's their own system too. Actually, it uses cards, not dice. Very fascinating. Very Victorian. It's Victorian Gothic steampunk.
Interesting.
Approach. Anyways,
send me a link later in chat.
Anyways, so I really enjoy editing because it really activates my FI a lot, and I almost get more enjoyment out of shaping and making somebody else's ideas better and helping them make the impact that they want to, or communicate what they actually want to communicate through it. And I'm just really good at figuring out how to embody or how to get those words right. I don't know, maybe because I had to spend my whole life translating FI into TI language.
And I think one of the powers of the ENFP is like the mediator, because we can bridge language to each other to different types. Mickey, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was saying that's amazing. I wish I had that ability. That's something I need to cultivate.
And my mom was a complete grammar Nazi, so I can spot grammar at a mile. Like, no problem.
Yeah. Oxford comma. Can we just get a shout out to how little it's used?
Weird Al's.
Editing. I love editing.
Watch it after. All you YouTubers, watch Weird Al's word crimes after this.
Yeah.
I don't get any commissions from it. I don't know why I told you.
And back to like my calling with informative writing, it just using TE in a healthy manner with like a direct goal and idea in mind, for me is cathartic. And while it's physically taxing, it just like, again, lets me just kind of flow and get into the lull of writing. And writing is far less of a, forced action and more of a, I mean, like I'm forced to for school, but I don't know. I'm so tired.
I like this question that's up on the screen.
I think that's been up there for a solid 20 minutes now. So what best gifts you can give to an ENFP? Pretty much anything that's on their wish list, because they don't really care much about, the gift itself. And what they care about more is like the thought that you cared about them and the fact that you wanted to do something nice for them. But if you want to give them something they want even more, it's got to be quality time, because the ENFP, especially, I think NF love language is that like spending time quality together. It doesn't even have to be like in the same room. If you're like separated and you have a Zoom call, just like call them and be like, hey, what's up? I want to talk to you. I want to share ideas. That's a constant gift that I think many
ask us questions. That's an amazing gift. And listen, and then actually listen to us.
And then respond with another thing.
Respond with a follow-up question. It's like, whoa, you're
yay.
So surprising. Yeah, if you're good at having conversations, call is good. But this is one thing that I would like that no one has ever done for me before. I do for other people is like if you read a book or something that has really good ideas in it, and you get the snippet that like encapsulates an argument, and send that to us, and then we could talk about it.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Like it has to be that crystallized. Like don't make us like read the whole thing if it's just to talk about one part. Like send the part and like what supports it, and let's talk about it.
And share your thoughts. I mean, you could do it that way too, but also share your thoughts about that part. Like I get so many people that will send me like, Bryan, you've got to check this out, and then they'll just send me a link to something, and it's like, well, why do I have to check this out? Like if they were to write like this has really meant a lot to me, and here's why, and then I'll be like, all right, I'll check it out, and then we can have I know there's a conversation waiting at the end of that. Otherwise, I just feel like it's just me watching another video or reading another link or whatever, and it's like it might not go anywhere, so it might not be worth my time.
And I think you don't even have to like give like all the different reasons and analyze it within the thing. You just have to be like, this meant a lot to me emotionally. I want you to share the experience with me, and then the conversation can naturally flow after that.
If I know that I'll actually have a conversation after, I'll watch the link. If I know that they're not going to engage with it after, I'm not even going to bother watching any link.
Exactly.
I think the title and send you the video. It's like the title is true. Watch the video. It's like, come on, man. That's not
what I love about personality profiling in particular is that I feel that I get a lot of gifts from doing that from my profilee.
Yeah.
The best gift when I think about it is that openness and authenticity and being real, talking about things that maybe you feel even ashamed of or uncomfortable about, or like this is something deep that either sharing pains or something, that's an honor to me.
It's that like
something that you feel different. So just being open and giving with those deep thoughts that you think nobody appreciates. No, I actually appreciate that, right?
It's that level of trust that you wish you could give to another person in your life, and by extension, you want to be able to give it to other people so that you can help them, because you're lacking in that in the specific particular way that you want. And it's something that you'll probably never attain because it's that any perfect picture in your brain. But you can obviously facilitate that, and that almost gives you as much gratification as it happening otherwise.
Yeah.
Personality profiling. Yeah, personality profiling is like one of the best things ever. It's kind of like an excuse to have a deep conversation with someone. It's extremely fulfilling. I feel honored whenever someone gives me like the privilege of typing them. And so the next question to the panelists: what's your relationship with masculinity and or the concept of maleness?
I don't know what is going on with you guys, but I'm big burly bear, man. I do this joke every single time it will be. Yes, I promise you, big burly Ruski man. You see this muscle? Let me get in. See this muscle? I'm big burly man.
Hey, where's the beach?
No emotion here. Only testosterone, man. Let's throw the football.
Can you do it too?
I feel like there's a big, massive disconnect in our entire society in the Western world. I don't know what it's like in Asia. It's probably pretty, well, it's different. Masculinity and maleness. This is actually why I really don't like objective personality's use of masculine and feminine, because nobody has a clue. They think they know what they're talking about. I wish that people would, because the biological aspect is very important in science, in healthcare and medicine. I wish we would have completely kept that separate, because then people add on all of these layers of social constructs onto what it means to be male and female, and bring up this fake masculinity and or femininity thing. When like I'm a feeler man married to a thinker wife. We both don't fit in with popular ways of looking at it, and it's a major pain point in my life in high school. There is nothing like, I agree with a lot of the philosophy that we all have feminine and masculine aspects to ourselves and need to embrace those things, but it's not really, it has nothing at all to do with male female biologically. It's a complete red herring, and it throws the whole conversation out the window. To me, I wish we were talking about the same terms, because then you can define masculinity and femininity however you want, and it's totally just using those terms and those words, you're already gonna lose the whole situation. You failed the debate right when you start using those words.
Non sequitur here, except non sequitur, because it's also loosely connected. Kyle, are you Canadian? Are you Canadian?
I am Canadian, eh?
Hey, nice. I was just like,
and I lived in Vancouver Island for the past year. I love it there, but I'm back in Manitoba for days now.
I thought I could do it.
Yeah.
This is this is interesting. I'm not sure if it's just a coincidence, but like, so basically this question is to ask about you, but you guys answered about like concepts in general, and I was like, that's so detached from who you are.
Well, no,
I'll take a shot at it.
No, we swim in concepts, and the reason our concepts that we produce are the result of previous FI retrospective reflections. So our beliefs and our values and our ideals and our thoughts and plans and opinions are extensions of who we are. So by saying that this is our opinion and knowledge of what's happening in society, we're extending a vulnerable part of ourselves that we've experienced towards each other. So it's more implied connection to self. But if you want to know my personal connection for, very concrete value, I pretty much reject many gender roles that are kind of thrown my way. But I haven't been I live in a very Midwestern town, and I have a Midwestern school. They're all very progressive, and my mom is from Washington State, so she's very liberal in a lot of her ideals. And especially being a Catholic, so there's that level of vocation of being a man and being a husband, and it's whatever God calls you to do. So I think my version of being a good man is very swimming and not articulability, for if that's a word. But it's definitely not like that toxic masculinity of like, I have to be silent, I can't show emotion, showing emotion is weakness. And then it's sort of the opposite of that, trying to define it here. You need to show emotion, and as an 8, I firmly believe that all humans need to express, like, if you want an idea or a question or a feeling to be answered, you're going to have to speak up. And I think it's that charged environment that is sort of emanating in a lot of America for guys that stifles them. And I think it might be a little bit more perceived on the specific guy's part, where they're thinking that the gender role is forced on them, when in reality, like, the dads don't really know how to approach their son and doing what their parents did. But the dad of the supposed guy could very much be like, I just want you to give me your emotions, I want you to open up, and not know how to articulate that. And it's a systemic problem that stems back from like when big burly men were needed in the world so that you could do big burly men things.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, because then I see what you mean, Joyce, also by the disconnect between the societal I guess meme of manliness and or maleness and our own personal views. Because I think for myself, a lot of my views on how I should be are kind of more traditional. Like I think that like as a man, I have to be prepared if something's gonna happen. Like I have to know that if shit hits the fan, that if I don't handle it or be trying to handle it, that it looks bad on me. Even if I have a partner, that, I mean, both of us might have shit on us, but it looks worse on me. I'm gonna feel like I should have handled it. Not that neither can handle it, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's certain like like luck stops. Like we could both take the credit, like the quarterback. Like you're the quarterback. So when you're on ESPN the next day, they're going to say Mickey, threw all the interceptions. They're not going to say the D-line didn't do what they're supposed to do or
You're using football terms, and I do not know football sports. The sports I know are debated.
It's like, you got the DPS, you got the tank, and you got the mage, right? If the DPS, I got to be the DPS.
It's all about the paladin.
Yeah, I could keep it going, man.
Right. You want to be the main damage dealer and not support.
Yeah, exactly.
Or perhaps like a damage dealer tank build.
Like I may be able to support and like switch the role. I don't mind that, but I know that from the outside perspective, I have to be able to be the DPS. And if I'm not the DPS, I'm messing up. But yeah.
So to clarify my little mini rant there, I do believe in a specific archetypal energy that we refer to as masculine that has a relationship with what we refer to as feminine. What I completely reject is how they're tied to gender, because that actually, because we have both of these types of energies that should be just labeled something else, because kids are being completely confused by it.
Yeah.
Right. And then especially media portrayal makes it even worse in most media. Generalization. We'll skip the media right now. Who cares about them? what ends up happening is that the very important facts of biology get even more confused, and like it's just not a useful conversation. And then you have debates where you have very factual minded people not understanding people that are legitimately questioning this tying of what we call masculine energy tied to males. And so they're questioning it. That's a good question to have. But I don't think the response is to then say, oh, well, it's all meaningless.
Yeah.
That's where I get, because now you're actually throwing out the scientific aspect that's completely separate. But instead it's like, well, no, we're actually saying that the energy is tied, and you're accepting that premise. And I completely, we need to, as a society, reject that premise in order to not screw up our scientific stuff.
Yeah,
and I think you're kind of like, I don't want to go too far into this, but you're using like more of an intuitive perspective on things, where like the debate in society is very sensory based, you know, and which is interesting, because to answer that question, for me, like developing my masculinity, this is a process I've been going through in the last couple of years, and I really didn't do it until my 40s. You know, I'm going to be 48 soon. But one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, I was an athlete when I was younger, and to reconnect to those things, like I've been like this year I had a goal, like every month I'm going to ride my bike 1,000 kilometers, you know, like doing things like that, where it's like, it's pretty masculine, because you set these unattainable goals, and then when you reach them, you feel like, oh, I've proven to myself I can do this, you know. I'm stronger than I even imagined. And that kind of setting those goals, that, you know, it's about willpower and developing that side of yourself. And what you're talking about, Kyle, is the cultural conversation. It's just confusing everyone, and it confused me for 40 years. You know, I rejected, like, I didn't want to be a man in a lot of ways. Like because I'm, you know, I want to be sensitive. I want to be a good person. And I was kind of taught, I feel like I was taught by our culture that, like, men suck, you know, you suck.
And meanwhile, so those energies are real, and they're actually positive. Like masculine, and what we call masculine and feminine energies are really good archetypes and modes of being that are very important and good. It's just the tying in, and then there's the toxic aspects. I mean, that's
and then like, we talked about this in our last chat. Like, we talked about this quite a bit, but like, I learned about the masculine archetypes, and learning how to, you know, how to connect to those is, I think, one of the most valuable things you can do in this whole field of personal development. If you're a man, and if you're a woman, if you have a man in your life, or a son or whatever, support that in them. Like, tell them that, like, they're, you know, we need strong, solid, good men, you know, and that means a well-developed man. So the conversation of making it, there's so much in our culture that makes everything like either or, and, you know, a fight, that we just got to stop that, you know?
Yeah, I like
sort of extend on like what I was trying to say with the systemic stuff before, as well as speak of my own personal experience and kind of address pretty much everyone in the room. So my personal experience was with my mom, who sort of allowed me, like when I was little, like a 3-year-old, I was playing with baby dolls. I was playing with like Barbie and stuff. So I was never sort of systemically, because I didn't have the dad in my life. My parents got divorced when I was 3. It's whatever. I'm fine with it. Glad they're divorced. So I didn't have that like man image in my mind. The image that I thought was a good, strong grown-up. It's very much more well developed in my mind, is what equals to each and every person. So there are some things that the man should do for the woman, and there are some things the woman should do for the man. There has to be some level of sort of roles to decide of which to do in a relationship. But I don't think that it's correct to say, I saw somebody in chat say this, that the man should always pick up the bill. Right? There's that systemic gender bias for certain things. So when you're in a relationship,
in a certain context, that would be a logical conclusion, but not in every context.
Because
there's these like rules that are stifling, and I think I'm going to let Mickey speak in a second, but I just want to finish the thing I was going to say. So What was I saying? So I think in any relationship, the roles that you need to differentiate between have to be done with time as well as between each other. And that's just my experience not having a super strong SP male role model in my life, or perhaps prevalent in my life, that or SJ for that matter is what I'm seeing, where it's like that gender, we have to be strong and we have to be prevalent. I don't know. It's just, I think we could do well with sort of getting rid of the systemic socio level ideas, ideologies. That is the word I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And I think it has to be a per man basis, because the man that I want to be and the man that I look up to are men that are true to themselves, whether that be like, you need to be strong or whatever. If that's authentic to you, that is a good man. But if you're trying to conform to society in a way that you're not, then you're just lying to yourself and you're not being the man who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's interesting, because there's a lot to develop there. Because like Kyle, when you mentioned like the energies and the archetypes, I think there's an important distinction to make between the energies and the archetypes, right? Because James Hillman talks about this, one of my favorite psychologists, is that we often confuse the image with the energy. So then like the archetype of like masculinity and femininity, let's just say, like the pervasive image of both of those is a man as the archetype of masculinity and a female as the archetype of femininity. But we're confusing the image that we see in our head when we're considering the concepts with what they actually are. Because really it was what we need is some sort of pervasive image of a female masculine and a male feminine that is like not a caricature. Because the thing that sucks is that the best examples of the masculine and the best examples of the feminine are majority male female, like at least in the common like Western culture or whatever. So it then gets hard when you're trying to like, because then I like to think of the archetypes as like we're grafting. They're like scaffolding for how we're gonna build ourselves. So we look at the best example, which ends up being a female for feminine and a male for masculine. We build ourselves in that image, and then we end up like skewing the image with what it actually is. So, yeah, for I guess the generations now, they're starting to tear down those images. But the thing for me is, because I think I'm at just the right age, that I'm seeing the images that I use to like sort of help build myself be tore down. That I don't think that's what we should do. We just need to build more images. Mm-hmm. And then, because if you're scaffolding yourself from multiple sources, then you get to mix in, you get to mix in a little bit, all the different things.
So that's another reason why I don't agree with a lot of kids like idealizing like heroes and wanting to be them, right? You want to exemplify some of their actions, but like I don't want, like Heidi, I'm gonna say is my hero because we're both 8s, we're ENFPs, and we vibe, and I want to exemplify some of the healthy actions she's doing, but I don't want to be her. And I have a plethora of other people that I look up to that I'm getting the scaffolding from. So I think that's a thing that I think a lot of kids, especially teenagers, don't develop well enough or don't have that realization. And that's when they end up going down the rabbit hole of like women social norms and social rules and man social norms and social rules, and going down that like toxic loophole and rabbit hole.
But I think it starts with you wanting to be that thing first, and then it diversifies. Like when you're a kid and what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be an astronaut, because that's the image that you see in a kid's book or whatever it is. Like you want to be that thing, and then as time goes on, you can learn that I could just learn about the planets, or I could be an astronomer, I could be all these other things. Like that. It ends up being like an astronaut in this case is the archetype of one who knows outer space, right? But then as you develop, you then know that spreads into a bunch of different things, and then just like when you're a kid, you may learn that, males, have easy access to masculine energies. And then it's like, well, how does that spread out? Like as you develop, then that spreads into, women and things like that. So maybe that idea cuts off women from the masculine archetypes, which is only more reason for why we need more images of
Yeah, I disagree with your statement about men have more easier access only to masculine energies. They get more positive reinforcement in those directions. Sure. In that way, it's easier.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's effectively easier. You know, it's not literally easier.
Yeah, you get more encouragement to go there. That's the only differentiator as far as I can see.
Yeah.
You just hide the opposite energy for the most part when you feel like it's not acceptable.
And I think you would like this book. It's called Invisible Partners. It talks about how that suppressed feminine inside of the male and the suppressed masculine inside of the female actually gets projected onto our partners. So when we pick partners, we end up just actually picking the part of ourselves that we're suppressing.
Right. Yeah, and it's still actually a part of ourselves. It's just,
Yeah, and then you end up being in love with the projection you put on the person. That's like a whole nother thing. But
like, what if people were given the message it's actually okay for all of us to grow and develop both our masculine and feminine energies that are inside of us? They're actually both healthy, and you can express them in healthy ways and not just the unhealthy archetypes. Like that would, to me, would be a very positive message.
But you need a
knowledge with the genders.
Yeah, you writers.
Whole conversation, guys. Joyce needs to say a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We have 2 to 3 more questions before we close the panel. But yeah, agree with the amazing chat and the positive reinforcement. That's a good point about how like we're reinforced to be a certain way, but it's not always who we are, and we have access to way more than what people like encourage us to do. It's like it goes back to the analogy with the like piano keys or whatever spectrum you decide to use. Like people tell us that there's a certain spectrum, like I don't know, 8 keys that you can use that you're positively reinforced to use. But the reality is your potential is so much greater than what people encourage you that is okay to use. So yeah, it goes the same with, you know, masculinity and femininity in this conversation. And so we have this question, but we also have a few more. If you guys want to stay on the topic, you can, but
we're trying to do it quicker with fewer
James, move on. Nice recap.
Yes.
Awesome. Do you judge people more on their intentions or actions?
Certainly, I think the intentions would govern the actions, but if you don't know the intentions, then you can like see in the actions. They're sort of hand in hand for me, and they don't exist separately. Because to have a good action, you need to inherently have a good intention. But I also sort of buy in a little bit to the utilitarian framework where it's like the ends justify the means, but it's very much up in the air on the situation. So let's say you're getting rid of world hunger. So instead of finding a suitable like renewable food source, you go and kill half the planet. Thanos. Just to throw back to that, like that would be the point at which like the ends would not justify the means. But let's say like you're in a group project and the teacher tells you need to have everybody included, but they're not doing any work, and you're just like, let me just get it done myself. Like you get the good result, and then you lie to your teacher about like, yeah, we all did work, and you get to fabricate the lie so it works. You get it done 10 times faster. You get off scot-free, and yeah, it's a win-win for pretty much everyone. But you didn't do like the, I guess, morally right thing to do. So at that point, I think it's the ends would justify the means.
Yeah, that's a rough one. You know, because it's like a really fine line. You know,
it's a very fine line, and it's definitely up to FI in the moment.
Yeah, because there's I'm a big fan of like Jewish mysticism, and they have these 2 words that I think sort of fit this. That's like a mitzvah and a vera, and a mitzvah is or the way I like to think of it is it's like as if we're finger puppets and God was the hand, and then a mitzvah is when we're doing what he would want to do. Like he's using us to do whatever we want to do. And then a vera would be the opposite. It's like whatever the bad thing is making us do those things. And I like to think that those little good things and those little bad things like add up to like building the best possible world or the worst possible world. So in that instance, I would judge people by their by their actions, I guess, because their actions are building up this thing, you know, and it doesn't matter what they intend if they're causing these bad things to happen, or you know, then
yeah, I was
but
talking
at the same
more.
time, sometimes you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet or something. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, yeah, that's.
But I think that's a really interesting thing from like the Jewish ideologies you mentioned. Because in Catholicism, we're definitely based on the fact that we have free will, but there still exists a grand plan out there. And it's another mystery that we as humans don't explain because we are simply incapable. So I think it's rather, I don't know, it's very interesting to me to hear other religions and like how other religions do, because there's a grain of truth in every single religion, depending on how you look at it and where you look.
It comes from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere, and personally for me, Catholicism, I was essentially critical Catholic, but I've come to learn and be catechized more in Catholicism, and that's where I've found the most truth and the most grounding. So even if even if God doesn't exist, like let's do Pascal's wager, right? Even if God doesn't exist and I do live this good Christian life, right? Then I've done good on the planet and I've been a good person, because that's what Christianity really calls you to do in its essence. But if God does exist and I've done a horrible job of being a good human, it's hell. So what are you going to take a bet on, right?
I hate Pascal's wager, but
I love Pascal's wager. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense. It's not stupid. I just hate it.
Yeah.
That's very closely connected to the previous question. Can you slap that back on a little bit? The one question I have is, what does it mean to judge another person? Like, I don't. So, what is that?
You want?
Yeah, that's too far. The one between. Anyways, the ends justify the means. I think to me it matters. So this judging people more on their intentions or actions, I hold space for people based on their intentions. If it's about judging, like, what am I judging? Am I judging their effectiveness? What's my metric? That makes a massive difference to this conversation. I have little patience for people that have bad intentions, no matter what the result is. I have a lot of approval of actions that create good things. People make mistakes. There's honest mistakes and there's ignorant mistakes. Like, it's pretty complex. And so what does it really mean with I'm judging? Like, am I cutting you out of my life? Well, that's a totally different situation. I'm reminded of back in, is this Reagan era? Brazil was going through a massive famine drought. Well-intentioned Americans thought, let's be the heroes, because Americans like to be that. And they flooded the market with grain, bankrupted the farmers in Brazil, and they turned to cultivating drugs because that's where the money was made. Very well-intentioned for the most part, unless, of course, they wanted to. There could be really smart geniuses up at the top of administrations that want to create unhealthy, dependent relationships geopolitically. But there was massive unintended consequences, at least not revealed intentions. There's massive unintended consequences to that were terrible. Is a stupid decision. Trying to be a hero usually ends up you being a villain. Totally against that whole hero archetype thing, circling back to the previous conversation. So to me, it really matters what consequences are when I'm evaluating an action, but I don't really evaluate a person based on the result, because we're, unless they specifically are trying to achieve an unhealthy result that leads to death and suffering of other people, we're finite creatures. So yeah, what do we mean by judge? That makes a big difference in my answer here. I think it's
sound like you
not
need
either or.
Yeah, I don't really resonate with the word judge in general. I mean, but to answer this question for me, if I take this question, I'm like, have to answer what is my Answer, I would say definitely actions. And I'm thinking about like okay, obvious or not obvious, but an easy example is Hitler. If you read, like I read last year, I read the start of Mein Kampf, and I also read the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Like his intentions were great. He wanted to create utopia, but what were his actions? You know, and I think most people have good intentions, but what they, so for me, the whole, like the ends justify the means, like that is one thing I really find very problematic. And I generally don't buy into it, because usually what that does is people end up justifying bad behavior because, hey, we're going to get here. We just got to do this. We just got to do this. I know it sucks. I know this violates every ethical reason, every more bone in your body, Brian, but if we just do this, we'll create utopia. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to do this. It feels wrong to me in the moment. So
yeah. And if you live by ends justifies the means, you become the hero that's really the villain. If you start debating with people and try to convince them into your point of view by using faulty logic or bad data, you're that's not an excuse just because you're in the right.
That's why
it's an unhealthy TE loop. What's the most effective way to end this debate right now? I can go there. I could do that. I would do that as a high schooler. Totally. I could make stuff up that sounded bang on, and I could totally destroy someone and get them to be totally convinced. But it was effective. But it destroys long term. It's not building long term. It's not a solid foundation for relationships or society or individual character.
Immediate, because I think that's what goes goes around in political debate. Like I won't choose a side or whatever, but I think that both sides feel that the issues that they're trying to solve are immediate. So there's a tendency to bend the truth or to omit facts. Because you hear that all the time. Because
I think we have to factor
omitting a part of the story that's important to the other side, just to make sure that this thing is, stopped or promoted.
Mm-hmm.
So I could give you a whole spiel about capitalism, how great it is and how horrible it is, and how America's done a piss poor job of it. However, just to call back to debate, if anyone has been in debate, this sounds like communist propaganda. As a policy debater, I have to promote communism because it's the best way. No, anyways, so capitalism, what is capitalism? I think the free market economy is great and we should keep it that way. But when we look at how some socialist, socialist capitalist societies kind of
like
function.
Terrible Canada.
I mean, like, if you can have some socialism does not equal communism, right? So when people charge a political debate, when they're like, "Oh my God, you're doing socialist policies," like the radical left, when they go, "Hey, why don't we give people who can't pay for healthcare the ability to go into the doctor and not spread diseases like coronavirus and stuff and get rid of that the sorts?" That's not going to cause like massive like dictators are gonna rise. We shouldn't get rid of the capitalist paid for healthcare. That's not a thing we should do. But there's these level. I think capitalism in America lacks some humanity that I think capitalism in other countries have. And that's why in America it's so charged, and so why a lot of college students who aren't getting the humanitarian thing that they want, or seeing all these humanitarian crises within our borders, when they see that, they're like, well, maybe these other countries did it better. And the ideology of communism and socialism in tandem allows for like everybody gets like the equal amount, but that's still bad, because if everybody's getting the equal amount for different amounts of work, then there's no incentive to do good work, and there's no incentive to not cheat. And that's why communism falls as an economic structure, because you're not going to produce quality products and everything's going to cheat. Everyone's going to cheat pretty much if they can't like get good.
People don't want quality products. That's why we have trade deficits.
Yeah. Or no, people do want quality products, but not for everything. Like there's a fair amount of stuff in your house that is really cheap, but you're gonna have a few things that's like, I have to get the good one of this. you know, the iPhone.
For some people. I think we care about, ENFPs care about quality for certain things. I'm interested in capitalism in Japan. How does that play out in that particular culture?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I was just talking to one of my students about this last night, and he's in his 20s and he's studying he's an accountant, and so we were discussing. I think he has a more idealized vision of what American capitalism is, and I was talking to him about because he was saying, in Japan, if you work too hard, like the government kind of takes more and more of your money, so we don't have the incentive to work too hard.
That's probably a good thing for work-life balance.
Right. Yeah. Well, so what I was pointing out to him, I said, but also here's the positive side of that. I said, I understand your point. Yeah. The positive side of that is when I go on a bike ride, I can go anywhere in Japan, anywhere, any neighborhood. I never ever worry like I would in the States, oh boy, this neighborhood is a little sketchy. Probably should speed up. Don't stop at the red light. Here, everything is very middle class. And even the quote unquote poor areas, there's no sign. Where I live, I don't remember the last time I saw a homeless person. In my city, the population's 300,000 people. Because there is more of a it's a capitalist society, but there's a traditional aspect to Japanese society which is very group oriented and very much
helping the people who need help.
We will care for each other. We love it. We are all Japanese. We're in this together.
Senior citizens is a big thing, right? You don't have neglected senior citizens.
Yeah.
No.
And it's more so not the government ignoring senior citizens, it's the families not being allowed to ignore the senior citizens that are their own grandparents or whatever.
Right. A lot of senior citizens here live with families. They'll move in. There's not many old person's homes as much here. That's just not as
because it doesn't make sense.
There's way more families will build a separate house on their property for the the grandma and grandpa to live in. I mean, there's just much more of that.
And I think
capitalism. Go ahead.
I think when I'm going to use healthcare as an example because that's what I'm kind of educated on. When we look at healthcare policies between places that are very community based and helping the poor and have very welfare type policies for pretty much everyone, they're actually overall there's less disparity between the economic classes and how they're spending, and it actually creates a much more prosperous nation. While you do still have the 1%, there's a majority of them are being middle class, and even if they're lower class, they're not American lower class where they can't pay for anything, and they're covered by government things, and that money keeps circulating, and it actually ends up allowing for a better process of exchanging goods and the money influx, and it keeps the economy far more regulated, and it also creates less of a information bubble and creates less polarized political views, and by extension that deletes the two-party system that America has, and that deletes many polarized views about policies. And I just wish America would stop having a stick up its butt about everything.
But I think in order to even get that far, you have to get over the sort of the American Calvinism, in that we believe that everyone who gets what they everything that a person has is what they deserve, right? So
it's predestined, right? In America, even if you work really hard, you don't have good opportunities, you're getting nowhere.
I understand that, but I don't think.
I know I'm agreeing with you.
Once you're in that position, do you then realize that that's the case?
Yeah.
You're not in that position, then you're well, they deserve, whoever it is deserves it. And then once if you imagine someone who's right at the border of receiving any kind of help, and they're working their hardest to get there, and then whoever they perceive is right below them getting the help, they're well, okay, well that wasn't equal then, So yeah. I think
I want to circle back to Andy's answer to answer the question. The problem to me from looking at America from having lived in Japan for 16 years, I believe we need free market capitalism, but it has to have heart. And that's what's lacking in America. You've got this crony capitalism, which is not free market at all. It's this combination of government and big business and rich. And it's how can we get how can we extractive capitalism is what I call it. It's how can we suck the most energy and life force out of the people, and maybe we'll give them just enough entertainment and things so that they can get by and they'll be happy, but they're not really, part of
It's
this
not
system.
for them to be happy. It's to make more profit. It's to get them addicted and that positive reinforcement so that they keep coming back.
Well,
and
they
paying
think
for more.
yeah. I'm just saying, like, you know, you give everybody Netflix, you give them their NFL games, you give them their, you know, enough things that can keep them like, give them their D&D, you know, like.
You give a dog a piece of jerky and it comes back for more.
I'm interested in because Kyle, you said you're a marketer or you do some marketing work.
Yeah, I was a nursery sales manager for 10 years.
But it's just interesting because this is an opinion that
I have investments in the stock market as well, which is the most efficient way to earn money by far. All the rules are in favor of investors.
Oh, thanks. That's good.
Yeah.
I probably will learn about that.
The most inefficient way of earning money is wages. The whole system is designed that
I'm just confused on how like you gain money with stocks. Like, how do you get the actual cash to spend?
Oh, dividends or buying and selling. So I don't do day trading because that's for people that want to have heart attacks and high stress. I mean, if you buy stocks, you're buying a share in the company. You now own 0.001% of this stock. If the share price goes up because lots of people want to buy it, you can sell that at a higher price. You make money that way. That's capital gains. If the company is profitable, they give back to shareholders. So I get 0.0001% of all distributed income. And so you only get taxed 50% on that. In Canada, at least, it's similar in the States. You don't, you know, it's like I worked for. You pay the same amount of tax as if you worked. Is it half or double? One of the two. It's like, anyways, it's efficient, very efficient that way. So that's the two main ways. There's speculative things, you don't want to go there. There's like shorting stocks and all that. That's just gambling at that point. So I was lucky. There's an element of luck to it too. With research, I invested in Tesla when their shares were $19 to $26 a share. After the 5-to-1 split last year, I think they're up to around, we got YouTube here. Tesla shares are now $695 US. So that was a good one. But I researched, it was a company built by engineers, not by designers, like the other electric vehicles. And I'm a big solar fan. That's one of my hobbies. I used to have solar panels on my old house's roof. So I was driving on the sun. It's nothing more rewarding than that. I've got a Tesla. It's super nice. Once you drive, when you don't want to drive a dirty, normal combustion engine, why would you have explosions under your feet it's so ridiculous. So yeah, I've made tons of money from that. But most of the time it's just, like for example, storing your money in a bank versus investing in a bank. You want to have shares of the bank. That's where you make money. You don't get money by having it in a savings account.
I need to study some finance from you, man. But I mean, the reason why I asked the question was separate.
Okay, sorry.
That was awesome, but it was in reference to capitalism with marketing, how capitalism creates bubbles, and one of the bubbles that I think, I mean, it's sort of meta because like YouTube is like supported by advertising, and a lot of like 'cause I've worked in marketing for a couple of years, and then a lot of people complain about not knowing if the ads are worth it or not, especially like display ads or something like that. Something that you get like 1% click rates, and there's some companies spend billions a year, and you don't really know if you're getting that kind of return. Yeah. But it's then supports. But the fact that this sort of bubble is by ads sort of supports like the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the YouTubes, all the things that are giving like sort of supporting this renaissance of information. In a way, you kind of got to give capitalism credit where it's due. I don't think we give it, like it's creating a bubble.
Capitalism definitely produces results. Mm-hmm. Whether you like it or what you think the strengths or weaknesses are depends on what metrics you use to evaluate it, like anything in life, right? Mm. Oh, and my comments about electric vehicles, I bought a Tesla because I was like, this technology needs to be for everyone, it needs to drop down and get cheap. And Tesla's been doing that. They're making efforts to go in that direction. Why I respect them as a company overall. Not perfect, no company is, but
I also think I like Elon Musk a lot.
You got a
he's a
man.
fascinating individual. I wouldn't ever work for him, but I appreciate his vision and his like. I need a work-life balance. I'm not working for him. But
Yeah, no,
he brings the best and makes people do things they didn't think they were capable of.
All right, so last question. Oh, but Andy, you can also answer right after I just say the last question. Do you feel high makes you impulsive? Do you can you provide examples if so?
It does the exact opposite of making me impulsive. For me, what it does is it like in the moment I can make a split decision, but I analyze all the different like a bunch of different possibilities, and from that superpower of the NE being able to see the different possibilities, I can have an impulse. I explore the impulse. I say no, Andy, bad impulse, and then I do a better thing. And that's with TE and stuff, and I also analyze with FI. Like NE is probably one of the only things that allows me to effectively not be impulsive. But I guess that's also been like years of practice since I was diagnosed as bipolar when I was in kindergarten. So it's been years of impulse practice control. So it's just an automatic thing for me to just kind of scan for it.
Okay. I agree. It's kind of like I don't know. I'm gonna do a nerd alert, like shadow clone jutsu. You know,
yeah.
You create a shadow clone. It goes to do a thing, and then you're like, oh well, that's a terrible idea. I am not doing that. You know, because you just sort of
wait until the clones revolt on a boat. You'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kyle.
Do you feel high NE makes you impulsive? I mean, so to get to the mechanics of cognitive functions again, just a reminder: NE is a perceiving function. It does not make decisions directly. It's the material from which we make decisions. So my impulsivity comes from TE. What can I get done as quickly as possible? FI isn't as impulsive for me because it takes some time. I have to slow down and think of it if I haven't already thought about it. So yeah, that's my answer. It's in the realm of a judging function, which is FIT. TE is more impulsive for me than FI.
Yeah, I don't think it makes me more. I think I'm slow. Like in a lot of ways, like I take a long time to make decisions. So no, I wouldn't say that any issues I've had in my life with impulses or things like that are related to any.
It's probably someone that has NE as a tertiary function that would use it a little bit more impulsively.
Right.
But it's still not. It's still in the realm. Like impulsive has to do with decision making, so that's more in the realm of your.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like if anything, it makes, like Andy was saying, it makes me less impulsive because I can see, different. I can explore it. Yeah. The options.
Yeah,
and you get unsophisticated NE. You just have a new idea pops into your head. It's like, oh, I'll just do that because you only have one because it's in the tertiary position. It's just one shiny new thought came. But for us, it's kind of like, well, we have 15 all the time, so
I think to other types that don't have high NE, they can see like us make a very quick decision to do something, and then they don't see what's going to happen in the future, and they don't see the connection to the future thought, so they think it's impulsive and not relating to the situation. So when they observe it in the moment, they like look back at that, but when they see it to fruition, because they're not exactly looking back at what that instance was in the moment, then they're going to be like, oh, he just made a good decision, and forget the thought that they were like, oh, they were very impulsive in that moment.
Right. That's a good point. I often tell people that intuition to me sometimes is like getting the final answer and not knowing how I got there. But but if I know the final answer and I'm like, all right, well, cool, I guess I'll do that. Like I don't need to. I don't need to.
Not taking the time to show your work.
Right. Exactly. So it's like, but I'll still. And then when I get there, people go, well, how did you do that? I'm like, well, I'm not. It's hard to explain because it's not really thought out. It's just like. I got it.
We at least can explain if we take the effort.
Yeah.
NI has a lot harder time explaining their intuition.
We have
an advantage in explanation.
Yeah, I can do it. It's just something oftentimes I don't want to do it.
You just don't feel like it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Impulsivity, another angle, could also come from our lack of care for social mores or expectations. So we can look impulsive because we're willing to do things that other people would say, well, that's crazy or unsafe,
Right.
or, you know, that's not acceptable. So it can look impulsive.
Right.
That could come from our FI's rejection of FE.
And especially as an 8, where I just like immediately, like if I have a question, I'm not gonna just like blurt in if like a person is like mid-sentence. I mean, I did that to Mickey, but I'm sorry. I do that to Mickey all the time. But we're cool.
I'm anticipating if I interrupt you guys, you can stay. I'm not throwing you off. You can still have your train of thought. So
yeah. So like I'm actually I highly scan the situation in a conversation for when it's the correct time to say something, and if something is going to be taken the wrong way, just like as an automatic thing. And with that said, as an 8, if I need something answered, I will just ask the question straight up.
To the commenter's point, though, I would say, like, for me, it's more like a Wikipedia or a wiki. And you know how when you're on Wikipedia, sometimes you click on a page and it has like 2 paragraphs, and other times it has like 1,000 pages or whatever. And whenever that's why I love meeting people that are completely different than me, that think in ways that I couldn't possibly think like that. Because once you meet that person, you talk to them, you get to fill in that wiki, you know, and then you could reference it whenever like a tangent comes up. So do you guys sort of have that, have like sort of like bookmarks in your, you know, like branch, that as soon as you find a person that could help elaborate on that idea, you're like, oh, I finally met a, you know, like a masochist. I've been waiting for to find someone so I could pick their brain.
I could go along with that metaphor. With the previous one about the map and the pinpoints, I mean, I think the whole point is that we have lots of pinpoints and we know how they're connected, and we're making more connections between incredibly disparate points because all things are connected and we have a pretty decent grasp. And the map is not just a flat 2D thing. We're talking 3D movable, like history. There's thematic history. We can manipulate that and say, okay, we want to talk about masochism, for example. We can. There's a whole bunch of ways to connect and organize masochism throughout history. Through current day, like, you know, how does this show up in music or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah. A lot of Any users, like I've heard them describe their Any like a hologram, like a 3D hologram, and they're looking to make all the pinpoints like you were talking about. Yeah,
all that sci-fi thing, that's just us normally, you know. I don't know, is it Iron Man that has his little thing? I really don't watch a lot of superhero movies. I'm not a
superhero person. I watch anime and stuff.
Yeah, I kind of reject the whole superhero premise, so that's my problem.
What?
We talked about that already, though. Yeah.
There's the archetypes, man. I
just reject
I am the greatest Superman in the world.
Great one.
But
normal? The question is, what is normal? Like, for what? What do you mean by normal?
Well, I mean, there are certain common trends that you can observe that exist between multiple people, but normalcy is something that isn't actually existing within like a broad term.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, see? It's like a hyperlink. Yeah.
Oh, is that a hypothetical question? What is normal?
it was
what is
rhetorical, not hypothetical.
Yeah, it was rhetorical. Or like agreeing with you, like.
Here, I thought we had to analyze.
We're giving these closing quotes that she wants to include, I assume. So
I can get behind any with wiki with hyperlinks.
Yeah.
Sorry, we talked exactly at the same time.
Do we have free reign of making sarcastic comments on these comments?
For sure.
Awesome. I highly doubt that you can dig Any, because Any is an incorporeal concept.
Whoa.
I know. Straight back to you.
My ears are bleeding.
Oh wait, there's a super chat. Is the anima real? If yes, what is the core tenet of which the invisible partners offers?
So is an animal like spirit animal?
No,
what do you mean by real?
Is so like it sort of stems from the Freudian idea of the id, So then it's like the Freudian connecting to Jung, and that like the id has to deal with our impulses, and our impulses are connected to like the collective impulses of the world, like a subconscious way that everyone acts that's rooted in their impulses. And
so is the anima like a specific like type thing that can characterize your impulses?
That like in order to then connect with the world, because then there's a collective unconscious. Like the last layer in yourself, like when you're going deep into yourself, the last layer is the anima. And once you unite with your anima, you're able to then fully connect with yourself. And because the
anima is an animation rather than animal.
Anima is in spirit, like the animates you. That's why the words are similar. But I consider the anima real because it's essentially the archetype of all of the feminine for man. It's the archetype of all of the feminine traits and ideas and ways of being that we sort of suppress and say we can't do that because we're not women. But the thing is anything you could do, anything that a person can do, anybody could do, doesn't matter if they're male or female, like except for like the biological constraints. So what Invisible Partners is essentially trying to get at is that in order to connect with your anima, like because it's hard to sort of know what it is or where it is you see it based on the females that you attract, or if you're a female and you're into men, you see your NMS in the males that you're attracted to. So you get to understand yourself by the people that you're attracted to, because really, when you first have that first attraction, you're in love with, you don't know the person, so you're just projecting onto them all the things you think a woman's supposed to be or a man's supposed to be. You're just projecting onto them. So and then that's why people end up like breaking up, because you're like, oh, this person isn't actually what I projected onto them. They're this whole other person, you know. So that's what it's offering. It's how to discover and develop your anima into a mature one. So
I'm not super, like, I'm no expert on Jung himself, and I know enough to be dangerous with this. My instinct is that, yeah, the anima is real. I feel like almost like it was Jung wrestling with exactly that idea, is that he's seeing the patterns of male and female not directly correlating to masculine and feminine. And it's his way of trying to describe or provide a metaphor that can help people navigate the societal pressures. He's like, well, this is part of you that you need to kind of eventually accept if you want to be healthy. And so this is kind of his narrative, like meta-narrative to mythology, if you will, to just help people get healthy. That's my instinctive.
So is the anima more like a spirit that transcends societal norms as well as biological sort of societal biological norms? So like
it isn't the spirit of transcendence. It is the other part of yourself that you're ignoring. That is
you're rejecting or ignoring or don't see.
Okay.
Or that society is rejecting in you, so you're suppressing it.
I got you.
How does it connect to the shadow then? I mean,
because everything you suppress, you put into your shadow.
Right. So, but I mean, what's the difference between anima? I know a little bit about this, but not enough. So what's the difference between anima and the shadow, you know?
Well, like shadow function specifically, or because I think that's a separate line.
I'm sorry, I missed.
Shadow function. Are you referring to shadow functions, or?
I was talking about like a shadow, like a Jungian shadow. But
I would,
the Jungian
functions, which is slightly different. That's just like, your other four functions that are in your top four.
My question would be, why would Jung? I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but my question would be, why would there be two words? Would Jung have the anima and the shadow? Based on what you just defined, it sounds like the same thing.
Yeah, I could clarify. Like the shadow, I consider like, I'll give you an image of it and then I'll describe it. So, you know, in most of these like hero myth stories, there's always that part in the story where the hero is in the darkest place, and it might be literally dark, or they're like drowning or something where they're just like overwhelmed completely, right? That space where you're completely overwhelmed, that is the shadow. So it's the part where you can't control, and inside of there are good and bad things, right? Because then most people are trying to conform to what society is saying, And most people are trying to conform what society is saying. So they shave off the good and bad parts of themselves in order to fit in. So you end up suppressing a lot of good and bad into the shadow. And the biggest thing that you're suppressing in there is the anima. So that's like the big treasure that's in there. So that's like when someone goes to is submerged, and then in there they find a bright light, and in the bright light, then they become like whole. So the whole idea of becoming whole is the finding your anima and bringing it into you.
So then the purpose of shadow work then is to kind of discover the anima. The anima is the treasure.
There are all kinds of things.
So can I come back with my own interpretation of like relating things? So let's say you're the hero and you got your ass beat by this villain guy. So you fall into the water and you're just like, I lost, I'm down. So in this ocean, you're kind of sinking down. But then you get this realization of like ideology that you had wrong, or like, I'm gonna fight, I have something to fight for. That kind of realization, is that discovering said anima?
Yeah. That's what it's trying to do, but a lot of these stories will do it wrong, right? Because then
I'm just talking about like the common trope.
The anima is going to give you that energy to then overcome, the adversity of the world or the pressures of the world, because then you're fully powered.
Gotcha.
And there's probably, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't keep going on this, but there's an element of in Star Wars, when Luke goes into the cave in Dagobah and the face under the mask of Darth Vader is his own face, that like he's kind of, that's the part of him that he doesn't want to accept is actually him still. I really, really wish that episode 9 had
something
more. Like there was an opportunity there that Ryan Johnson set up, and the ball was dropped completely about incorporating this shadow stuff and like, transcending what you think of yourself in and accepting the dark parts of you while still being moral in it all. Like there was such an opportunity that should have happened there, but that's a whole kind of
that's what I said. Our hero stories are good. They just need to be better because there's nowhere to start. Because at least
like I was let down big time because there was so much that could have been done. At least we have the Mandalorian.
I haven't watched it. I'm gonna binge the whole thing.
You need to
I
watch
don't
it.
have Disney Plus. Have I sinned?
It's worth it.
For sure.
I've sinned for sure.
I'm being an
Joyce, you are
introvert,
fine.
and now I'm just yeah. So we were talking about the shadow, and it reminds me of how whatever you resist persists, but it persists in your shadow. It persists in your subconscious. You never truly get rid of something if you suppress it. It just manifests itself in a different form. And the only way through is to like accept it or to integrate it, because you cannot reject a part of yourself, or else it just goes in your shadow. The only way to like have control over it is to like integrate everything, to give it a place in your psyche. To give it a home in your psyche. And so any last comments before we end the panel?
Cedars of Lebanon by U2 has this: choose your enemies carefully because they will define you. Make them interesting because in some ways they will mind you. They're not there in the beginning, but when your story ends, gonna last with you longer than your friends.
Jesus.
That's also why Jesus' teaching on loving your enemies is so important. Because it's really about loving yourself, the parts of yourself that you don't accept. Your enemies are more like you than what you choose to be your enemy says a lot about yourself. Very, very key.
I'm gonna leave off with you're Lebanese, cool.
Do you like that song, Cedars of Lebanon?
Individuation for the win. Yes.
Awesome.
Anyways, I'm gonna leave off with be yourself. Don't let anyone tell you who you're gonna be. Authenticity is what makes the world go round and helps you be a better version of yourself as an 8. I want that for everyone. Give them their autonomy to be happy.
Yeah, and so thank you, ENFPs, for coming out and sharing your perspective. It was really fun hearing about all your stories, about your TE and about your NE, and about like how you guys improve your SI and the things you do to improve that. and to hear the types of gifts you all would like. And it's nice how much you guys know about the archetypes and how far the shadow side goes. I love how Mickey is able to really investigate into the archetypes of Jung, and just he loves archetypes in general, and it shows in just how educated he is in it. And Kyle, I love all of your impressive TE investments and how you're able to like get the most bang out of your buck. You've done so many things in life. You got so many things done. You're a Renaissance man who takes a part in a lot of things, a jack of all trades, and you do them so well. And
I know enough about everything to be dangerous.
And Bryan, thank you for your Japan story and telling us about the climate there and how people how they treat seniors there. It's really wholesome. I love that. And your blog, it's going to be linked below. It's lovely. It has a lot of ENFP wonderfulness. You should go check it out. He works really hard on it. And Andy, I love just the amount of energy you have. It's like a power bomb. It's like a lot. It's amazing. It's like I don't need coffee if I just have Andy. So it's great. It gives me like a power. It gives me an energy boost, and it makes everything lively, and it makes everything fun. And you bring up the mood, and you make it an ENF party. So thank you. Just thanks all of you. And now it's time to sleep. I think we've all earned a good night's sleep.
Yeah, Joyce, it's time for you to go in hibernation for another time.
I swear, I feel like we drained your battery.
It's gonna be a while until the next new video comes out, guys. I need to recharge and hibernate for 10,000 years, like Jirachi the Pokemon. Yeah, and thank you everyone for commenting and leaving your questions and your insights in the comment section. I had a lot of fun reading that, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.